It's time for Windows Weekly. Paul Thurrott and Richard Campbell are in the house. Lenovo's got a rebound. Is this a bellwether for the rest of the PC market? Teams is now unified. Woohoo! Woohoo! Epic comes to the Google Play Store. Paul gets a special delivery and some really good news for Xbox fans. All that coming up and a whole lot more next on Windows Weekly.
Podcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twit.
This is Windows Weekly with Paul Thurrott and Richard Campbell, episode 895, recorded Wednesday, August 21st, 2024. I'm done transitioning. It's time for Windows Weekly, the show where we cover the latest news from Microsoft, and lo and behold, look who have joined me in the magic spectral box.
Of magic.
Here we go. Magic. Don't know how it works.
Here we are sorting electrons again.
To my left, Mr. Paul Thurrott from Thurrott.com, THURRO good.com. And by the way, Richard and I have conspired that when we introduce you, we do this.
Yeah. You should do that every time I leave to go to the bathroom today. Because I'm in
Paul
really
may be
bad
doing
shape.
a little bit later. Also, he's a little tummy rumble. Also, Richard Campbell from RunAsRadio.com on my right. Hello, Richard.
Hello.
Hello,
Good
Leo.
to see you both.
Yeah, it's good to be here.
Let's see. I guess we can just launch right into it. I was going to mention I will be in New York City in a couple of weeks, and we're going to do a meetup, weather permitting. You just told me, Richard, it's rainy on the East Coast.
It has been,
It's going to be
Ernesto passed through, so
I thought because of the rise of COVID, we should do it outside. So I've chosen Bryant Park as our gathering place, but this may have been a big mistake.
When? What's the date for this?
Saturday, September. What day is that? Is that a 6th or a 7th? That's Saturday. Here, I'll look at my calendar.
Saturday.
7th.
I feel like I must be
3
away.
p.m. East Coast time. So the meetup. If you want to go, if you want to take the train up, we'd love to see you. It'll be fun. September 7th, 3 p.m. to 5 p.m. And then we're going to do a photo walk. Joe, who's in our club and is a very accomplished street photographer, is going to take us on a photo walk, starting with Grand Central Station.
Nice.
And ending with the Oculus. It's going to be an amazing trip. So we invite you all, you don't have to be a club member, to join us in New York City in the Big Apple, September 7th, 3 p.m., Bryant Park. In case of rain, stand under a tree.
Well, Bryant Park has those, little.
I've only been there during the Christmas thing, where that's where you go to get the raclette.
Microsoft used to have little launch event thingies there, like
Really?
Media Center was there.
Oh, okay. So it's appropriate.
Some other stuff. Sting
have to get a
sang
permit?
there during the Windows XP launch. You have to get a permit? No.
Officer,
just show
I
up
don't know
and
these
pretend
people.
This was. It's a flash mob. I can't.
It's a
control
flash
that.
mob. Exactly. And Scooter X, you're correct. It's BYOF. Bring your own flask.
No.
Anyway, I just thought I'd throw that in before we get going. Let's talk Windows 11, gentlemen. I shall dodge out of the conversation until you need me.
well, it's so weird to be talking about Windows.
I can come back if you need me.
Where did he go? What's happening?
What do we do now?
We'll probably be okay. So there wasn't really much going on with Windows until about 2 seconds ago.
Wow.
So, and in their, classy way, they announced this by adding to a blog post that dates back to June 7th. And I don't know how you'd find that out.
Wow.
Yep. So
they added a paragraph to a 2-month-old.
Oh, they do this all the time. This is, you'd see with this blog post, they've done it twice.
Maybe I wonder if they thought they looked at what Google and Apple were doing and saying, "Oh, screw it,
Yeah,
let's just go with it."
I feel like there would be a use for an RSS feed that could alert you when blog posts were updated.
You're just talking crazy talk, Mr. Throt, honestly.
No, sorry, too technical. Okay,
Yeah.
so
I would also point out that this is a post about recall, so maybe they're being a little ginger. Like, I'm kind of surprised they didn't publish this on a Friday afternoon.
Well, that's kind of my thinking. Yeah,
it is about recall, but like I said, they actually do this kind of thing all the time. Like, this is in the Insider program is very typical. So I don't know how you find out when things change, but this is
only insiders. We don't.
Yeah. Well, so remember, someone was just asking me about this. It's been 2 months since this was supposed to come out, and in preview, right, with the original Copilot Plus PCs, and then it didn't. Right. So we've kind of gone over that, but a couple of things have changed in the interim, and one of the question has always been, and as time goes on, is still even more pressingly, like, when will this happen, right? So what they've revealed today is that's going to happen in October. Now, they don't say this, but that's when 24H2 comes out for everybody. So it kind of makes sense that it's sort of paralleling what they wanted to do originally, which was we're shipping 24H2, the original version, with Copilot Plus PCs in June. We'll have this thing available in preview, and at some point in the future, it will go stable. So now it's going to come out in October. As I said before, in June, when they changed their plans, it will go out to the Insider program first. Vaguely, we don't know how that's going to work. But it occurred to me today, and only today, that maybe one of the reasons this has taken so long, because I think it was Raphael or Brad. I was talking to somebody. It was like, do we think that this thing has been setted, if you will? Like, remember there was the sets feature they were going to add to Windows 10 with the tabs for all apps, and all of a sudden disappeared and never came back. And I never thought that would happen. It's too important. It's too big of a deal. But like I said, today, it occurred to me, I think the part of the rationale is this is for Copilot Plus PCs. You can't open up you could, but you could open up this Insider program build, which you'd have to make ARM builds available for, obviously, which I think they do anyway. And it would only go out to like 3 or 4 people, right? So if they had done this in June, July, I mean, there wasn't really a big audience there, especially the subset of that audience that would want to even do this, because one of the many things that hasn't happened yet with Windows on ARM is they don't have, for all PCs, recovery images, so you can go back to stable, or downloadable ISOs, so you can go back to stable, right? And part of the part of the complexity there is that Copilot Plus PCs have over 40 LLMs on them, local, like SLMs, I guess, small language models. How we delivering those things, So I think they were kind of working through all those issues. So the technical aspect of, you have to give them an out ramp, like, to get out of there, whatever that might be. The Copilot Plus PCs are complicated because of the LLM issue. And then there just wasn't a big audience, Right. If you read this post carefully, and you have the time, it's short.
We're not just talking about reading the first paragraph. Right?
Just the first paragraph. It's curious to me. It doesn't say, right? This is the point. It says that this thing will be available in preview on Copilot Plus PCs, which today are only Snapdragon PCs, right?
Right.
But one of the things we don't know too about Windows 11 24H2 is next week or soon, a couple of weeks, they're going to announce the Intel chips, the Lunar Lake chips that will have Copilot Plus PC level MPUs. The AMD chips are already here. PCs are starting to ship. Are we going to call these things Copilot Plus PCs? I have theories about that, but does this mean that this will be more broadly available? And to not complicate, but to give nuance to this conversation, I would say, when you go back to the security researchers that were showing all the security problems with this thing when they ran recall on non-Copilot Plus PCs, those guys had x64 PCs, right? So that means this code was in the x64 versions of Windows 11, whatever, in preview, which may or may not mean anything, but I mean, obviously, at some point, this feature has to come to everybody. It can't be, just for the small subset.
Yeah, at some point we get there, right?
Yeah. So a lot of, we have more information. Good. We wanted this. It's been 2 months. But, questions, right? And I think that's been our experience with Windows. So this, typical or whatever. So we'll see. they do mention the whole security thing. Security is our top priority, not AI. Don't forget, it's security.
It's all about security.
It sure is.
They said while breaking all dual boot machines for a security patch.
Well, it was all about security. Listen, those computers are secure.
They are very secure.
You can't use it for Linux.
At all. Chances of hacking them low.
Yes. And I apologize. I didn't put that in the notes. We should discuss that briefly, right? I mean, the Patch Tuesday update that went out last week, I guess, apparently broke dual boot with certain Linux distributions, right? I think you could argue it probably doesn't impact too many people, although I like the apocalyptic headlines I've seen about it. So, it's like, well, you better just throw out that computer. It's useless now. It's like, yeah, that's not how this works. One of the things you could do if you had to get into Linux is, see a therapist, but also you could disable secure boot apparently, and that would do it. But obviously they're going to fix this. This isn't this is the problem with Microsoft.
It's also a 2-year-old vulnerability. Why would you rush out a patch now?
Richard, to break Linux. This is the thing that people don't appreciate. Microsoft is still trying to undermine Linux. Didn't you get that memo?
Oh, God. Yeah.
I know. That's what the world thinks. They're like, oh, they're doing it again.
Yeah.
There they are. It's like, no, guys, they're just write bad software. Just get used to that. It's
never attribute to malice that which can be explained by incompetence.
Yes, exactly. It's not malicious. It's incompetent. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
and I've also seen the argument it wasn't supposed to be installed on dual boot machines. Like, how is that?
Yep. Is there a thing in there that prevents that from happening?
I don't know the answer to that.
Because if there is, it didn't work.
Yeah, clearly didn't. But and it is a small subset of users, but they're going to be vocal ones.
Oh, yes. Yes, that's true. Yeah. And that's the thing. That's the real kind of headline here. It's just a lot of anger, which is understandable, but just misplaced in the sense that it's not malicious, guys. They just don't know what they're doing. It's not fair to say, I wouldn't say it this way. I don't mean to say they wouldn't test that scenario. They should test that scenario, right? Like we know.
Well, and it even sounds like they did and said, oh, that's a problem. Let's make sure it doesn't install on that. And that installing thing didn't work. Which
they got crowd-struck then is what you're saying. They didn't test it properly. Maybe.
Is it on by default or off by default?
What's that?
Recall.
Oh,
Are we talking about recall? Am I?
No. This is the security patch that broke the Linux.
Sorry, I'm behind. Sorry.
No, it's okay. But to answer your question, recall is you have to opt into the Insider program to get it. It's not going to be. We're not going to see.
Yeah, but if you're in the Insider program and it gets pushed to you, is it on when you?
We don't know. I remember the original plan was. It was going to be optional, but opt out after the fact. The little asterisk they never told anybody, and then they complained and like, all right, we'll make it opt in during setup. Like we'll change this. We'll flip the switch there. So I would imagine you'd have to turn it on. I can't imagine. Well, I can imagine all kinds of things. I don't know. I'm guessing
we'll know when it happens. Yeah, and we'll hear about it. Yeah, when it happens.
Yeah, they'll update a blog post from May or something, and we'll learn that way. That's how we'll find out.
They should have. How could they not have an RSS feed?
Jeez, I don't know. I don't know. This is what happens. Love this company.
When Apple puts out a press release, I get notifications in 15 different places.
Well, the original one did have it did go out an RSS. It's just that they updated a 2-month-old blog post. Right. So there must be you must have a way to do that. I don't know, like I said, but this never occurs to look. It didn't occur to them to do this. How do you think they were gonna,
Dare I say it's a tough computer science problem.
I will tell you, it's not actually, but but it is for them. Yeah, it is for them. So yeah, beyond that, there wasn't much going on this past week. There was a pretty good looking Canary build, and Canary doesn't map to anything, so it's not clear when this stuff will appear. But there's a new version of the Windows Sandbox app, which allows you to, run. It's a quick running virtual machine that's based largely on, it's based entirely actually on your computer, so it comes up really quickly. But it's a sandbox environment; you can test software, etc. They're adding a bunch of new features to that, clipboard redirection, audio, video output control, runtime folder sharing, etc. So that's cool. Don't know when that's coming. I just a couple of small things, but this one kind of blew my mind. FAT32, the disk format, right?
Wow.
I want to say this debuted with Windows 95.
This is such a big story. This is a huge story. I love this.
Well,
story.
So I wrote this up, and then I had to look this up because I was like, wait, what? It says you can now format a disk as big as 2 terabytes from the command line using the FAT32 file system. Like, I'm pretty sure
it was
FAT32 supports
2 gigabytes. Yeah.
From the command line. Like, actually, FAT32 as a format supports, I think it's 4 terabytes.
Mm-hmm.
It's just that they never updated the command line tool. So I didn't look at this, but I assume that if you put a USB flash drive, or I guess it would be a disk in this case because it's so big, and plugged it in and said format and shows FAT32, you had a 2, 4, I assume you could do that from the graphical interface. But this is referring specifically to the command line.
I got the story wrong. I misread it. I thought
everyone did. Everyone was like, "Oh, Microsoft's finally supporting more than 32." Did. It's like, no. This is the command line version. Yeah,
right.
I'm sorry. I
No,
apologize.
don't be sorry. Everyone got this wrong. I looked it up. I was like, "What are they talking about? This has been there forever.
It's been fixed forever, but not in the command line tool.
Not in the command line tool.
Well, it is the end. It is the end of summer. The interns had to finish something.
Yes, exactly. That's right. Well, that's, by the way, good for them. That's kind of a nice low level thing to fix.
Yeah, somebody went down the list and went, "What? This has never been fixed. Here you go. Off you go.
Yeah.
Work on it."
Yeah, I mean, if Windows was built correctly, everything would be built. The command line would be the single source of truth, and then everything, the GUI would all be built on that, right? But we talk about doing that, but we don't really ever do that. Mm-hmm. And then I think it was just yesterday they released a dev channel and a beta channel. Release the dev channel adds one new feature and the beta channel takes one feature away, although it's coming back. It's so stupid. So yeah, I mean, have a lot of fun with that, guys. But I guess if you left align the start button, which, a lot of people come from Windows 10 would do. I think, Richard, you still do that, right?
I don't only put it on the left. I put the whole bar on the left.
Yeah. Yeah. So if you do
why
that,
waste the vertical space? I got lots of horizontal space.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah. Okay. So I don't actually even know off the top of my head because I'm not a psychopath. But if you do that, like Richard does, the widget button does something. Where does that even go? I don't know. It must go right next to the start button or something.
Yeah.
So they're going to move it over toward the system tray when the start button and taskbar is left aligned. Yep. That's what we're testing. So
this is the features.
Yeah. And then if you're familiar with the way, I don't remember when this happened. It was either, it wasn't the first one because they talked about it for the first one. So it must have been 22H2 in Windows 11. They added the ability, or they added a feature. In fact, I can see it right now, where you're using a microphone and there's a microphone icon right in the taskbar. So no matter which app you're using, you can actually toggle that thing on or off, right? Now, a lot of like laptops have that button right on the keyboard, but I'm using a desktop computer. So it's kind of, that's a nice feature.
Yep.
And I guess they're adding a Windows Studio effects icon like that so that when you're using a camera, you can control the effects right from there. I mean, there are actually other ways to do that, but they tested that and then they just took it away, but they're going to bring it back. So whatever. Inside a program.
You get to see how the sausage is made, and sometimes the sausage is ugly.
Yeah, right. I think this was late last week, probably. Still, the earnings from the second calendar quarter of this year are still dribbling in. Lenovo had a great quarter. I mean, like really good, like 20% year over year revenue gains.
It's real money. Yep,
and the majority of this, of this company is the PC business, right? So 11.4 billion of their 15.4 billion in revenues came from PCs.
And in laptops or desktop, because they make a whole bunch of everything, like too many things.
So actually, there is a line in here, and this is interesting to me. And I bet this is, I shouldn't say this, probably similar at HP and Dell. Actually, absolutely similar at Dell. HP might be a little lower, but 70% of their revenues from PCs come from commercial PC sales.
Okay, so selling into business.
Yeah, so it was a good quarter for that. They didn't break down laptop, desktop, but the traditional, breakdown is probably 75 to 80%, maybe even more, like portable.
Yeah.
So it's hard to say.
But it's also things like they make dedicated Teams machines for conference rooms and things like that.
Yep.
And they turn out a ton of them. Like if you go look in that space, they have like 10 different models.
Yeah, I mean they're very and that's sort of the point. So Lenovo like Dell, and I think somewhat like HP. I think like I said, I think the HP mix is a little off from that, but they primarily target businesses, right? And what are what does everyone think of when they think of Lenovo? ThinkPad, right? So that's obviously
that's the beast, for sure.
Yeah, so that's going great. There were some other things, like they're from Japan, so I guess the yen was doing terrible in the quarter, so actually that benefited them because the revenues coming in were often U.S. based. Also, they report their earnings in U.S. dollars, which I find to be interesting. So anyway, yes, they're doing pretty well. That's
you mean news. Hong Kong, right? They're from Hong Kong.
I think they're Chinese.
No, I'm sorry. Did I say Japan?
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
Japan. Yeah, they're from Hong Kong. I mean,
let's name every country in Asia we know. Yeah, they're from China. I apologize.
Yeah,
it's hard to tell the difference.
Yep. Sorry, you're right.
And you're not supposed to call it Hong Kong.
Are they Hong Kong?
It wasn't the yen. I'm sorry. I added yen. It was the currency exchange was favorable to China, or favorable to them being in China. I'll stop talking about that. And then speaking of HP, so I mentioned this probably last week, but I've since reviewed that laptop. And so if you're interested in this kind of thing, I recommend reading the review. I recommend you read everything I write. I don't mean it like that, but I went off on a longer than usual bit about efficiency and in this case, because like the things that they did to try to overcome the problems with Meteor Lake, which, by the way, is not the way they would describe it.
No, but they did, though, didn't they?
They did, though. Yeah. And so that's what's interesting about it, right? So this computer gets really good battery life for an x64 computer, which is very interesting. And I think it's tied to all the hard work that they did to, and by that, I'm sorry, I should say about 7.5 hours in my experience, real world.
Which is decent battery life for an x86 machine.
Yeah, that's what I mean, right?
Machine, yeah.
And I'm going to guess and say that a lot of the battery life issues, obviously, if you actually sit there for 5 or 6 hours and the battery dies, you're using the computer, then that, okay, that's the battery life. But I think a lot of the problems we see in the x64 space are battery drain because of unreliable power management states.
Yeah, parasitic drains.
Yeah. And I don't have any way to measure that. And this is just based on it's kind of anecdotal, my experiences, whatever. But seeing what they did and seeing how effective it could be, it wasn't always, but this interest, they have all these sensors in there. So there are presence sensing sensors, but also sensors to sense if it's in a bag, and out of a bag. And
right.
It's trying to be more aware of its environment, and
you're saying it has an in the bag sensor?
Yeah, there's literally a bag sensor. Yeah.
Wow.
Because they don't want it to hot
overheat.
Right? Yeah. This hot.
The issue I had in Mexico with an otherwise identical laptop, if that thing had been in a bag, I mean, that plane could have gone down. I mean, it was like, it died. It lost 60. I think it was 67% of its battery in 1 hour.
Yeah, and changed the shape of your bag through melting.
Yeah, I don't know what could have, what on earth. It's not like you're like, oh, were you running Adobe? No. 67% in 1 hour. That something was horribly wrong.
Yeah, no kidding.
So this is very interesting to me. There's I still do this every day, right? You open the laptop, it comes on, you're like, nice. And this one was not like that, right? If I actually closed it, it did a better job if you left it open, which is not how I do things. But if you leave it sitting on a desk, like a lot of people might, and you walk up to the desk, the presence sensing kicks in, sees you, gets it out of the deep sleep, goes into the light sleep, lights up the screen, goes out of the light, that type of thing. And so by the time you get in front of it, it's like, oh, there you are, boop, 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 and you're in. And that's nice, right? But I don't do that. So my experience was slightly different. It usually involved opening the lid, wondering for 1 second if anything was going to happen.
Yeah.
And then the power, what do you call it? The boot screen, the logo comes on. You're like, okay, it's booting up, and 3, 5, 7 seconds, maybe the lock screen would then appear and then it sees you and you're in. So it's not instant on in Snapdragon, but look, if you've been suffering with these things, I mean, it stinks that they had to go to such lengths, and maybe there's still more work.
Rather than addressing the core problem, which is there's something wrong in memory and power management, we'll sit on top of it and go, oh crap, we're in a bag. Ignore power management. Do this.
This is what they can do as HP, right?
Yeah.
The hope is, I was going to say Intel will do something, and I started vomiting in my mouth. The hope is that Intel, they will make future gen processors that are more efficient and actually work, right? And that we'll see. We're going to find out Arrow Lake and Lunar Lake are coming. And then for these guys and for older chips that, I don't know. I don't expect them to do a lot. I really don't. But I actually don't know how much work goes on on Intel's part. And then,
but your position here is that it's a chipset problem rather than a software problem.
I'm basing this on, look, these were both HP laptops. And then my experience with Meteor Lake more broadly, lots of problems that I've identified. And they were horrific in that last HP laptop, although they did fix the big ones. They never fixed battery life, by the way. And then this one, just seeing, like, knowing how much they did and seeing it in action, it's interesting. It's just an interesting, you don't usually get this level of detail, like, from the PC maker. Again, they weren't like, Intel's terrible, so we had to fix. They will never say that. HP has got to be their biggest partner, right? They got to be careful with that stuff. But they did do a lot of work to make this thing make sense. And yeah, I mean, pretty much it does, you know?
I was so sad they made me send it back to them. This is what we were doing ads for.
It is a nice laptop. The EliteBook
You like
1040
the keyboard too, right?
Except for a couple of things. I actually wrote a separate article about a weird problem with the keyboard where the home key wouldn't work with different keyboard shortcuts. And so I use like a markdown editor to write. And I found out it was based on web technology just the other day, because I got to think about it, Shift Home, which is Shift F12, do that in a browser. And that the dev environment pops up. Oh. So this was popping up for me in Typora as I tried to select text. I'm like, what's going on here? So I guess you could get used to anything. Like if you just punch me in the face every day, I'd eventually get used to it. But that's kind of what it felt like. Yeah. So other than that, like their keyboards can be sublime.
Kind of a conflict between the different beasts.
We have
keystroke.
X amount of space. We have
exactly.
Look, everyone knows about the Copilot PC key. The one thing people aren't really talking about is new Windows keyboards also have a snipping key for the snipping tool. So instead of like print screen, you're actually seeing that go away to some degree. Right. And there's like a snip key, which is probably just print screen because they map to the same thing. But now it has
the name. Yeah.
Yeah. So they're trying to fit what they can fit in the little limited real estate they have. And I wrote extensively. I've been typing on computer keyboards since there have been computer keyboards. I have strong feelings about this. There are standards. And even if you have dedicated home and page down, page up keys, you should still support function key plus some arrow key to do those things. And that's what the problem with this machine is that they had a dedicated home key that only worked if you just hit home. But if you did a keyboard shortcut, that never worked. And if you tried to use it with an arrow key and the function key, it didn't work either. So it was like, that's on HP. Like that's something they did. That was a design decision. You can tell the person who designed the keyboard does not type, or doesn't use these things. Look, I mean, are these features that most people probably don't use? Yeah, probably. But they are a standard part of the PC keyboard. I'm just saying.
Mm-hmm. Paul's review is on Thurrott.com, the EliteBook 1040 G11.
Yeah. It's a great laptop, though. I mean, it really is.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, you know,
Richard, did you finally get your...
Oh.
You know what I'm talking about?
I'm guessing you did.
The Snapdragon dev machine? No.
Yeah, so I fell for the same thing you did. They updated you should be getting it by...
Right.
Yeah, I should
without
be getting
actually
it.
shipping it.
Right. I imagine the movie version of the story where it flashes to the customs office in British Columbia and these guys are playing video games on it or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like, sorry, it's held up in customs.
Is it coming from? Well, no, because mine's. Where's it coming from?
It's
coming from Arrow. Whoever that.
I think it's coming from China.
China. So it's probably the case that Qualcomm hasn't shipped them.
Yeah, I suspect that they're just making up delivery dates. They don't have units
because they don't have units.
Yeah. Well, there are many questions around the whole Snapdragon thing. One of them is, for some reason, there were 4 tiers of this, right? We suspect binning. Everyone seems to have the one. You don't see a lot of the other ones.
It's not the top one either.
No, right? It's not the top one. It's usually
that's
one
why we
up from the bottom.
Because isn't that what's in the development?
That's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking the yields on this maybe aren't great, and
I just double checked. My estimated ship date now is September 18th.
Yikes! So here, look. This will come up later in the show too, but like one of the little hidden side dramas in the PC industry that people aren't that familiar with is this notion that IBM's, Jesus, Paul, Intel has been paying off PC makers for years to exclusively go with their chips, right? This is the incentive program they have. This is how they've undermined ARM at every step of the way. So with Snapdragon X, Qualcomm, literally, they said this explicitly. They're like, we have to play this game. We're going to up our payments to these guys. We're going to make sure we get in there. They have to give the chips to those guys first. They have to.
Yeah.
Right? They can't give it to no-name Chinese company that's making a dev box with 0 margins or whatever the heck it is. The chips are going to the PC makers, right? I think that's all part of this problem.
Which would be the good news version of the problem. Like that would be the good news version of the problem.
Yeah. Estimated ship 18 September, estimated delivery 19 September. We're on the same track.
Yeah. So here's the question. Did they get a batch and we didn't make it into the batch?
Yeah. Is anybody listening? Did any of you get it?
No. You guys actually both did this pretty late. I mean, I don't mean like weeks later, but
no, we didn't do it.
It was days later.
Didn't do it day of, yeah.
I feel like the enthusiast guys were all over this. We're like, oh my God, and I don't know of anyone who has
reviews.
Yeah. No one has one.
No. So the more likely thing is that they realize, hey, that delivery date we told you, it ain't happening. Bump everything a month.
So Keith S. has put something in our Discord. I'll have to watch a YouTube video.
Alex. There's a video. Okay.
So that's why we don't have those dev kits yet.
Can somebody TLDR this for us?
TLDR it, if you will.
What's his summary? This guy no one's ever heard of?
Well, I can play it. Let's see.
Who knows everything about this topic?
It's 10 minutes long. We're not going to find out anytime soon.
Okay.
It had a Snapdragon chip in it, but it was a little bit underpowered.
Alex, tell us. Yeah, he has the same screenshot saying delivery 15 August, and then and then he tries to cancel it, and it says we can't cancel it.
Oh, it's against Chinese regulations or something.
No canceling. So I will watch that as an exercise. Okay. Basically, they have them. The computer says 0 in stocks. Is what Keith says.
That's not really wild. That's just
Right. That's not right.
Listen, if you want to fly to the factory in China and find out, I would support it. I would pay you. I would add to your Patreon, but
sure. That's not right.
Yeah, but definitely, you hit the point that if it's supposed to be a top tier processor in the dev machine, they're having yield problems.
That's what I think.
Right. And so they have to deliver to their primary customers first, which are going to be the machine makers.
You just reminded me of something else. To my knowledge, there's only one PC that has shipped with the highest end Elite X chip.
Right.
And do you know the name of that company that makes it?
Lenovo?
No.
Microsoft?
Samsung.
Oh,
Qualcomm's biggest partner.
Right.
Right?
Samsung
I'm just asking questions. No,
I think Samsung fabs them, and so they're probably
I'm just saying they're
keeping them.
But they are Qualcomm's biggest partner. They're the only PC, and they're nothing in PCs.
No, they made
only one.
And what do you bet they made the promises of those top tier chips before the real yield numbers came in? They're looking at because the other thing that's going to happen if the yield on the top tier chip is like 10%, you got to sell all those other processors.
I know. They got to go somewhere.
Yeah, they're going to flood the market.
Right. We're going to throw.
Let us pause to celebrate our wonderful sponsors, and then we will continue on with more news from Microsoft. How about that, gentlemen? Are you in agreement?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Our show today brought to you by a company we've been doing ads for a long time and really love, Thinkst Canary. Here's the situation. You have, everybody, I presume, has great security around their company. They got perimeter defenses up the wazoo. barbed wire, razor wire. Nobody can get in. Problem is, people still get in, as we have learned time and time again. How do you know that they're inside your network wandering around? They don't announce themselves. They tiptoe around. They trace every footstep, right, as they go. Meanwhile, they're exfiltrating data. They're investigating all the nitty-gritty details of your network, including where your backups go. This is bad news. That's why you need a Thinkst Canary. Thinkst Canaries are honeypots, but not hard to deploy. You can set them up in minutes. You just go into the hosted console. There's a drop-down, and you can choose what your honeypot looks like, whether it's a Windows server, IIS, maybe it's a Linux server. You can say, light up all the services like a Christmas tree, or just some select, just turn on port 139, whatever. You can also make it be a SCADA device. Mine is a network-attached storage. You can make it a SAN. You can make it all sorts of stuff. Now, you can also set up Lure files with your Thinkst Canary. These are little files that look like PDFs or docx or, whatever you want. They're indistinguishable from the real thing until the bad guy opens them, and then you get a message. That's the whole point. If somebody tries to log into your Thinkst Canary or accesses your Lure files or tries to brute force your fake internal SSH server, you get an immediate alert that says there's somebody messing around inside your network. No false alerts, just the alerts that matter. You choose a profile for your Thinkst Canary device. You register with the hosted console. You get monitoring notifications in any way you want. Text messages, Slack, email. You can get a phone call. They support webhooks. They have an API, of course, syslog. So you can have it any way you want. But the point is, when you get a ping, there is either an outsider or a malicious insider breaching your network. They make themselves known instantly by accessing your Thinkst Canary or its Lures files. This is such a great tool. A big company might have hundreds. A small company like ours, just a handful. Let me give you some pricing examples. Visit canary.tools/twit. $7,500 a year gets you 5 Thinkst Canaries. You get your own hosted console. You get upgrades. You get support. You get maintenance for the whole year. And if you use the code TWIT in the How Did You Hear About Us box, you're going to get 10% off the price. And not just for the first year, but for life, for as long as you're a user. These things are a must-have. In fact, if you want to see what people think of the Thinkst Canary, go to canary.tools/love, and they've posted over the years all the tweets, all the comments, all the thoughts, people from some of the names you will recognize, the biggest CIOs and CISOs in the country and the world. They love their Thinkst Canary, but I got to tell you, they know that this is, should I do this? You can always return your Thinkst Canary. They have a 60-day money-back guarantee, 2 months, and you get a full refund. I should also tell you that in all the years, I think it's 7 years now that we've been advertising Thinkst Canaries on Twit, no one has ever claimed the refund. People love it. Visit canary.tools/twit. Enter the code TWIT in the How Did You Hear About Us box. The Thinkst Canary, everybody needs these. Canary.tools/twit. We thank them so much for their support of Windows Weekly.
Yeah, the Canary Trap's actually a term from Tom Clancy's The Patriot games.
Oh, really?
The technique already existed, but which was really, hey, I think I have a mole inside of my organization, so I put different versions of the same memo for different people and then see which one gets leaked. And
on we go with the show. Let's go to Microsoft 365.
Well, if you hated the consumer version of Teams, it's more likely that you just didn't notice it. Good news. It's in the regular version of Teams now. They've integrated them into a single app.
Is anybody going to care?
Nope. It's the thing no one was asking for. The only thing dumber than 2 apps, one of which no one ever uses, is one app, half of which no one ever uses, I guess. But I
think it's just a protocol difference, right?
It honestly, this looks no more sophisticated than my .NET app, meaning you just click something and then you're in consumer Teams, and you click something else and you're within, they're not mixed up together. It's not like a combined inbox or something in a mail app. It's just 2 separate interfaces in the same app that do not ever run side by side. So,
and maintain separate contact lists. Like,
Yep.
but this is the failed opportunity that Microsoft had during the pandemic to make a consumer version that nobody took on. And Zoom won that. I mean, to this day, right. If you are associated with Microsoft in any way, you're using a Teams account, you want to talk on Teams because that's what you use. And if you're anybody else, you don't use Teams. Full stop. Right. And then I have a Zoom account just for that, because you just have to deal with the reality of
this is. I can't. Well, I don't want to apologize for them 100% here, but part of it was just a weird matter of timing. They were transitioning to Teams. They had some idea, for replacing Skype with Teams. Consumer pandemic happened. They were caught a little flat-footed. I mean, this was the time they should have maybe put the brakes on Teams for client, for consumer, and really push Skype. And then it would have been one day we could have just updated the Skype client. It's like, oh, look, it's called Teams now. I mean, they could have done that, but they don't always think ahead like that. So, yeah, I don't know. Teams is successful, but it feels a little bit like Windows Phone 7, where they kind of released this thing and it's not ideal. And they're like, we're going to replace it eventually. Don't worry. And they finally got that second client out, and they got it right. Yeah. The 2.0 client is great.
It was pretty good.
I had all kinds of problems with Teams before that. So the consumer thing, though, I don't know.
Yeah, I think it's too late. They missed their opportunity there.
Yep. Yeah, that's too bad.
That's what it feels like.
But it's out. This is not a big failure, and it's not a huge. Well, it is a big failure, but it's Teams itself is very successful. Obviously, it's the most successful Office product in probably over 20 years. Teams for consumers, and also, we're not going to talk about this at some point. It's just not going anywhere. So I guess rolling it into the one client maybe is a good way to let it disappear with dignity. Or something. Yeah. I don't know. Maybe. I don't know. It certainly doesn't have the controversy of the new Outlook client, right?
No, yes.
Which actually should be.
I've had people ask me if I do a show on RunAs about the new Outlook client. I'm like,
yeah. You're like, no, I cover work technologies.
Yeah, I don't know that sysadmins care, right? Other than just not doing it, what do you want to talk about?
Yeah, right. Other than everyone hates it. It's like I spent 2 weeks trying to find someone who didn't hate it. And all I found was a couple of people who didn't even try it.
Yeah.
I'm actually really shocked by how negative the reaction is from some people, or certain crowds.
Yeah. But I think it's also a defensive reaction. Mail is funny that way.
Yeah.
I mean, he said still using the classic Outlook client and cursing it as well.
Well, I mean, for example, I would say Gmail works amazingly well in the new client, and it works horrible in the old Outlook. And saying that to a Microsoft guy is like, like, who cares? And I'm like, well, people use both.
People use Gmail. What do you guys use? Do you use a web interface or?
Yeah, just web.
No, I use the classic Outlook. Yeah. I'm super old school on that. Dude, I still have memories of owning Exchange Server. Like, it was barely a year ago.
That wasn't that long ago.
It wasn't that long ago.
They're more like nightmares, I think.
That's when I got rid of it. I wasn't using it anymore. I had moved all the mailboxes off it a long time. Yeah. It's like
the last time I used Outlook full time, you could carry a PST file around in a floppy disk in your shirt. And I knew people who did that.
Yep. No, listen, I can only do therapy so fast. So Outlook Classic.
Yeah. I could probably get by okay with the Microsoft Web interface, honestly, whatever they're calling Outlook Web Access these days. It just so happened when we switched into the company that, was doing Thurrott.com at the time, that's what they had. So it's what we use. And,
it's often it's not your choice.
It works fine. It's fine. And plus I spent a lot of time. I funnel all of my email through this one account. So everything appears there. I can send and respond to email as if I was that other account. The other accounts are all basically empty because they forward and, they probably archive, not delete. But, if you go and look at the inboxes everywhere else, they're just empty, right? Because everything's in this Google Workspace thing. So, I could move it out. But this is where the stickiness of being lazy comes into effect. Yeah. It's like... it's like Gmail is good. I mean, maybe something else is better, like Proton. We'll talk about that actually right away. But then you look at like, okay, what's it like to actually move email? It's like, it's okay. Yeah. So I never found this, but I saw one reference to the fact that Loop 2.0 is out as well. And Loop is, of course, that Notion type thing that is so much more than Notion because it's Microsoft and they over-architect everything. But, I'm still interested in it. And I kind of looked around and I looked at it again on the client, like which is a web app in Windows. And I looked at it in mobile, but I don't see the 2.0 version. So I don't.
I think I have it. Like I see you haven't written an article about it. You just made this note about it. And I use Loop for the whiskey notes.
Yeah. Oh, nice. Okay.
Right.
So you're using it like I would use Notion.
Yeah.
And would you say it works okay?
No, it's unreliable.
Yeah.
That's why I only use it for the whiskey bit so far, right? I can wing a whiskey bit if I have to.
I moved everything to Loop at one point. I didn't really talk about this too much, but it failed in the most basic way, which is I'm on my phone. I'm at the gym. I walk up to a machine and I have to see what the weight is I'm going to put on it. I look at my phone and it says something happened.
Yeah. And that's the message. And
then you're like, right? I'm like, oh, screw this thing. Like that happened 2-3 times. And I'm like, yep, I'm done.
Yeah. And I've had it mix up, workspaces, like just bad things. It's unreliable. And so I've learned to just be very gentle with it. Right. And I don't put stuff that's too sensitive in it because I just don't trust it. It's obviously been improved.
Right. Getting trust back
it's tough. So I have gone under the settings and there's an about. And they have an app version, but it's a date timestamp. It's 2024-08-14.
Yep.
Which
like whatever that means.
No, that means it's like from last week or
right.
No,
but I mean it's with regards to versions. Like I did the same thing on the web and it's the same thing. Yep.
And the other thing is that like there is more stuff hanging around, right? Like it's definitely looking more cluttered.
Yeah, it's Notion can get a little heavy. I mean, I'm used to it now, so I just don't really think about it too much. I don't know. We used OneNote for almost this entire show. Mary Jo and I, by myself, and then Mary Jo and I, and then I think I switched before you came, but
I never opened a OneNote on this. I opened it.
Because we had endless problems. We could not edit a document at the same time without it failing everywhere and having all these versions up in the corner, and I had to reconcile differences, and it just happens. We put up with this for years, and there was a brief period of time, and I'm probably an outlier here, but they had that thing that it was the modern Outlook OneNote that became the OneNote for Windows 10. I love that modern client. It was less cluttered. It was I liked it, and so I was like okay with that for a while, and when I look at that kind of classic Office, whatever we're talking, 2013, 2019.
Because they basically abandoned that modern version of OneNote.
Yep.
And we went back to the old one. Yep. And I think it's because Loop was supposed to take over the space, but Loop is just not up for the job yet. I don't know when it will be. But, I'm very careful. Most of my work is still in OneNote, right? Yeah. Conference planning, like all stuff that's vital and absolutely has to be reliable and work perfectly across all my PCs and all my other devices.
Do you ever work in real time with another person in a note? Like, is this just for you?
Well, yeah, no, I have worked in OneNote that way, but not routinely now. Where routinely you and I are editing Notion together. Like that's just not
a little sore from doing it with Mary Jo Full.
Oh no, it's because
I have PTSD from this. Like we developed a system where we would literally say, "Hey, let me know when you're done in there. I have a couple things I want to add." And they're like, "Hey, we kind of talk the day of the show, and then 15 minutes before Windows Weekly, I'd bring it up, and there was a bunch of errors up in the corner, and now I have to manually rectify these sync errors and figure out make sure I'm not missing something." And I did that dozens of times. It was just too much.
Notion's been okay, right?
Notion's been perfect.
Notion's been flawless. Yeah.
And what happens in Loop, Richard? Does it lose content? Does it lose stuff?
I've never actually lost things, but it's made me feel like I've had because I've had to go looking for it. So it's like,
it misfiles things or whatever.
Yeah.
It is a hard thing to do this.
Well, and it was really like it was mislabeling things, and and if I went to fix it, I made the problem worse. The trick was as soon as you're not confident what's going on with Loop, close it, open it again. And it literally just needs a restart because
it's not a healthy relationship.
It's not reliable software. That's and the number.
I don't like what you're saying. I'm going to walk around the block for a week, for a day, and then.
And a non-trivial one is like the mobile client. It does not deal with partially disconnected states well. So if the internet is not flawless on your phone, it's probably not going to pull stuff up, or it's going to go into a tailspin. Or you're going, if I've tried to, doing the whiskey stuff, I'm in a store looking at some unusual whiskeys and I want to just make a few notes about them.
Sure. Like a normal person.
No, I'm not doing that. No, I'll just take a set of pictures and clean it up later.
Yeah, that's too bad.
Yeah.
I'm in a position now because I've used Notion for so long. I'd have to go back and look, but I think it started with Windows Weekly, so that's probably the date.
And you've now propagated other things into it. Yeah,
oh my God, I use it every day for everything.
I am not happy that I'm between OneNote and Loop, but both of them have problems.
Right. Yep.
Yeah, I use
at least you can use both at the same time.
On vacation, and I use Notion on our for the travel planning.
Right.
In fact, great. Last year or 2 years ago, when we went on the cruise, I sent you a Notion. This is one of the best things.
It was awesome. It was beautiful.
Sent you a Notion page with our itinerary and stuff, and it's a great way to share.
I don't even use it to its extent. I'm pretty much plain text, right? I mean, I do little headings for this show, and I do headings every once in a while. But sometimes there'll be a picture, but I'm not doing like, oh, I'm working on a budget, so I'll use one of their templates. They have all these things. Like there's a whole thing going on there. It's like, I don't care. I just want to do text basically. I would like actual offline would be nice, like real offline, but it hasn't been that much.
Disconnected clients are hard.
I put PDFs in. This is our planning for the upcoming trip. I put all that stuff in. I mean, I really.
Yeah. So actually in this image, you can see like you have icons on each of those, whatever they're called, top level notes. And I actually did do that at one point. Like you guys probably see like Windows Weekly has some kind of a, whatever it is.
Yeah. You do fun things with it.
Yeah. Like I do that sometimes, but like, no, but that makes it look nice. Like this is a nice looking thing. Like this is not a.
No. And that
boring
you can
work
share it
document.
as a public web page. Right. So it's, so for a group or that kind of thing, it's great.
Let me ask you though, do you pay for it?
I think I do. Yeah, I think I have
so I don't pay for it, and I would if I had to, but I don't understand how I don't have to pay for this. I use it so much. You would think I would have run into some limit where I'd say, okay, like I use you every day. Like, of course I'm going to pay for it.
Nope.
Not even once. Like I just don't. I guess I'll just keep using it. I don't know what's happening.
I use it for all kinds of stuff. Actually, I really like. I like it a lot. I like it that it's graphical. That's what I just like.
It's pretty and it's got pretty. It's like that thing you showed is a good example. It's a hard thing to describe, but just like the layout and the padding between elements, and it's modern looking. It doesn't look like something from the 90s. But
to be fair, I was all excited about Loop because I thought, that's going to be Notion Plus. Of course, I'm going to be able to put in Microsoft Documents and SharePoint.
Well,
but
So the dream is for me, because I'm a writer, is there a way I could use this tool for writing, right? And unfortunately for me, the end game usually is publishing into WordPress to the web. And actually, that was one place where I probably would have used OneNote instead of Word at some point, but it's not the same rendering engine underneath, or it wasn't then. So if you copied from OneNote and pasted it into the web, it was garbled nonsense.
No, man.
Like it was, and that's the end of that. And Notion, I don't remember anymore. It's been a while since I've looked, but I think you have to export or something and you get probably just HTML or whatever it is, but it's an extra step.
Yeah, Notion is not, this is the big flaw of Notion is you.
But they must.
If you live in Notion, you can't really get it outside of Notion.
Well, it does have an extensibility model, and I bet somebody right now is typing. Let me look.
Oh, there
must be a WordPress thing where you can say, "I'm going to make a WordPress blog," and then I bet there is, right? I'm sure there is, right?
Yeah.
Whatever. Anyway,
that would be
Notion works well. I want Loop to work. I'd be happy to go there. I'd like to have everything in OneDrive and have it sync and have it always be there. That would be great. Although, again, Notion, not too many problems.
WordPress sync for Notion.
There you go.
It has to be. Has to be, right?
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
Written in PHP. Woo!
Oh, of course.
Right.
What else?
Nice.
Of course.
PHP.
Yeah.
You mentioned Proton. I think a big shift in what's going on in Proton, and this
blows my mind.
You've been focusing on this for a while, and now I'm kind of starting to think maybe I should move to Proton.
I don't know what it is. They've been turning it on past 6 months, year, something. I don't know. Proton has actually been around for 10 years. They started with mail. I looked at it whenever that was not new, I guess, because it was 10 years ago, but sometime 5 years ago, whatever it was, it's like, yeah, this looks good. But again, switching email, whatever. But they've added to their product portfolio a lot, right? So obviously calendar and the password manager, VPN, et cetera. So they've got all this stuff. And then they've been iterating on these things very heavily. So for the past, 6-9 months, I've been writing as these things come out. And they kind of keep getting better. It's really nice. And I've really fallen in love with the Proton Pass, which is their password manager. And now what they've announced is the two co-founders and their first employee have endowed a nonprofit organization, a foundation, with enough shares to make it the primary shareholder in Proton, the for-profit company, to ensure that this thing operates according to their ideals,
right,
forever, right? There are no shareholders. There's no way anyone can take over.
There are shareholders, but the majority share is held by the foundation.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. And
foundations end up with trustees, and trustees can go off the rails. But you're building a structure that is more resistant to an individual's power to direct a product.
Yeah. So the way they describe it is the board of trustees is legally obligated to act in accordance with the purpose for which the foundation was created, which they've spelled out very explicitly, which is, yes, we want Proton to be self-sustaining. We don't want it to be Mozilla, where if Google walks away, they're dead. Or we don't want it to be Tor, which is they describe as government subsidized, which is kind of interesting. I think it was Signal. They described as billionaire subsidized. Like, yikes! I know.
No, it's true. That was a group of Russian oligarchs that wanted a communication protocol that their government couldn't take.
Yeah. So they're like, look, this has to be a sustainable business. It's not, they're not like everything's free, like they have 500 employees or whatever it is, like that, they have, bills and whatever, but then they want to invest in the thing. They want it to be profitable. But as far as the organization that owns it, they've it's kind of incredible. I mean, it's
very idealistic. They're scientists. They're idealistic.
Yeah, they were
creatures,
CERN scientists. So
yeah. And that's actually the way they describe it. They're like, look, we know that businesses are put up to make profits and to grow, and that's the point. And eventually, what happens is other people invest in your company. You go, public, and you have shareholders, and you have to answer to them. And it's grow, more. And they're like, yeah, we're not doing that.
And they're not alone. This is how the Home Assistant Foundation is run as well, right? Like,
yeah,
there is these businesses, these entities that have been created by individuals who just want to make the right thing and aren't concerned with becoming the next billionaire, and so are willing to say, "Hey, how do we protect this?"
OpenAI. Oh, wait.
Yeah, not all of them go well. I would also say this,
right?
It's all well and fine till the billions show up. Right.
Yeah,
like the possibilities of billions showing up for Proton are low. So
right.
Money ruins everything.
Yeah.
That's really the truth.
Yeah.
Cyndi Lauper was right.
Mm-hmm.
She nailed it in the 1980s.
Yeah, girls just want to have fun.
Not that one. She-Bop. I meant She-Bop, obviously.
No, I looked at Proton. I have a membership, like a full board membership. It doesn't do a few of the things that I use with Fastmail that I really want to do. For instance, domain.
Okay. I haven't looked at it too seriously because,
but that's a feature shed issue. It could be fixed.
Yeah, I mean, if they added that feature, I probably would move. The other thing, though, that I really believe is that the notion of having encrypted email is just flawed. It's just not. It's not designed. It's designed to be an open, postcard.
Well, the notion of having a portable passkey is also inherently flawed. You know what? I love it.
Could be.
I love it.
I just think that Proton encryption, it's a little. It's not really ideal. So if you're going to if you want encryption, use Signal. Use something that's a messaging platform that is really truly perfect forward secrecy, encrypted, and all of that.
And everything they make is open source, by the way. So
I have
you don't
huge
trust them.
respect for
I mean,
Proton.
you can go.
It's
see
not
for
that I
yourself.
don't trust them. It's just
I don't mean you.
That's a flawed thing to kind of stick encryption on top of email.
Yeah,
people seem to want it. They don't really. And
people want a sense that their email is protected, but they're not willing to sacrifice anything for it. And there's no, my Outlook has had various forms of encrypted email for a long time, and they all suck.
Yeah, it's not it's not.
I haven't looked at it yet, but they do. They have their storage thing, which is a little expensive. You're paying for it. It's like tipping in America. We don't understand how much things cost because everything is kind of subsidized or whatever.
Yeah.
And I think the storage thing is a good example of that, because when it's Google, Microsoft, even maybe something like, well, not Dropbox so much, but there's more expense going on there than you realize.
Yeah, run your own and find out in a hurry.
Yeah. So it's expensive, but they're starting to go down the path of a Google Docs type thing in their Drive service. And, Leo said the word Notion, and he said, I think it was like, I think the notion of, and I was like, ooh, Notion. They need a Notion.
I got a Notion.
I want a Notion. I got a Notion for a Notion.
That's also a risk, though, because as you add more features to something like that, it can get a little funky.
Yeah, I mean, there might be a natural size for this company, and we may be at peak Proton right now.
Put too many features. I don't know. They may have put too many features.
I don't know. It's not the 1990s anymore. When Microsoft was like feature.
Right.
That was all they did. All right. None of these are related to each other, but what the heck? I'll put them in one section.
This is your editorial piece, and I like it.
I just got. It's kind of it seems like a subtle distinction. I hope it makes sense, but I'll just use the Microsoft example because it's the clearest, I think, to all of us and to the audience, et cetera, which is that, and I've mentioned this before, Microsoft has this thing. Well, Microsoft has this thing called Office, actually, to start. You would buy Office, and then you would use it, and then they would come out with new versions of Office, and you would not buy those because you already had something that worked really well.
Yep.
And so depending on the customer, especially with businesses, the purchase time, the upgrade time would, go out further and further. So eventually they solved this problem somewhat by coming up with something that was eventually called Office and then Microsoft 365, which it reached like no-brainer status at some point, whether you're a consumer or a business user, I think, and primarily for, the storage you get along with those desktop apps, and they were constantly updating them. I talked about how hard it was to keep track of that stuff, and there was a several-year period where every month, here's what we're adding. It's like, oh my God, what's happening? And when you do the matrix of products, just talking about like Word, for example. So Word has a desktop version on Windows, on Mac. There's a web version. There are mobile clients for iOS and Android, and iPad's slightly different. And then there's the all-in-one apps, and it's like what was that thing, like dictation support,
right.
And transcript came first to the web version. That was like 8 years ago. I think as of today it's everywhere, but that's how long it took. It took forever. And like keeping track, that's one feature in one app in this giant galaxy of services and features. Like it's impossible to keep track of, but a no-brainer. $100 a year, 6 people get this. Are you kidding me? No-brainer. But now they have AI. Right now it's Copilot. In the business space, they could do the thing they've always done in the business space and have tiers with more expensive tiers, having more features and all that kind of stuff, and trying to get users to go to the more expensive tiers. That's a viable business strategy. It's worked great for them. I mean, it still does. They still talk about it. They talk about businesses adopting the E5, E7, whatever the names of these things are, and spending more every month per user, right? Which is what they want. So that's worked out pretty well.
Yep.
The problem I have with the AI stuff, the Copilot, if you will, the Microsoft 365 Copilot or Copilot Pro or Plus or whatever they're calling it for consumers, the same thing, which is either $20 or $30 more per user per month, depending on which one we're talking about, is manyfold. But these are the types of feature updates they would have just added to Microsoft 365 as part of your existing subscription.
And have been, right? Like there's so many products and new stuff in M365.
Yep. It's just that type of stuff. There's not that much of it. It's a pretty, like I talked about this galaxy of features and whatever. It's there's no brain that could contain all of it. Copilot Pro Plus, whatever, Copilot, we could talk about it right now. We could describe exactly what's in it. It's a finite series of features. It's not worth 2 to 3 times.
Copilot for M365 is a lot of things, or at least it's supposed to
eventually,
be.
of course, it's growing.
It isn't right now.
It's insane. And at some point it will be too much, but it's already too much. I guess you could think of this maybe as an insurtification type stuff, but the other problem is that thing we've talked about a lot, which is that, if everything is AI, then nothing is AI. And Microsoft is betting a lot of money, like $19 billion in the last quarter on infrastructure alone, that they will be able to keep doing this. This is not Office suites in the 90s anymore.
No.
It is so easy to build services for cheap or free by a third party of any size, that the things like, if I could look at Microsoft 365 Copilot and say, okay, the one thing I'd really like to have is this feature, I can get that thing for free somewhere else right now. Almost no matter what it is. Now, there will be exceptions. I get that. But for me personally, I just don't, I will pay for Microsoft 365. I see the value. I am not paying for AI. Like, I'm just not. No.
But, I think you're getting to a broader point here, which is that large language models, AI is a bad term. So large language models are a feature of a product, not a product.
Yes, that's exactly right. They are. This is something I latched onto very early on, and it actually stuck, which I like in my brain anyway. Which is, AI is like MSG. It's an enhancer. Right. You are the core capabilities are in the
and
product.
make you sleepy and cranky, but otherwise it tastes delicious.
Just put it. Awesome. It looks like crack. It's AI is something, if it works well, properly implemented. Is not a word processor. It's something that makes the word processor better for maybe spell checking or grammar checking or summarizing or rewriting a paragraph or whatever it is. It's like autocomplete in Visual Studio, or it's or maybe something like I don't have this problem usually, but I certainly do if I open up PowerPoint and I'm looking at it like where do you get started? It's good for that kind of thing. But that's like a wizard. That's a feature of PowerPoint. That's not something I pay $30 a month for. That's ridiculous. So I don't know. That's where I'm drawing the line.
And you get into this other game, which is how much time does this new tool have to save you before the $30 a month is irrelevant?
Yeah. Fair. Well, but here's the thing. So I got to that point. It was, in my case, it was $20 a month with the images, right? That's the one thing I've talked about. The one thing that Microsoft Copilot has done very well is that's like that to me made sense.
You added new
capability. I tried the DALL-E stuff from OpenAI. I tried the Gemini stuff, and they were both kind of garbagey in whatever ways. Doesn't matter. But I can get that for free now. So
for now anyway, right? I mean, this whole field is twitching. The bills are starting to come in.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, but see, here's the thing. We're starting to roll out computers with powerful MPUs.
Yeah.
A lot of these things that are running again, like, if, I don't know how Grammarly works, but I'm going to assume like everything else on earth, it probably runs against some S3 instance, and they're using whatever AI up in a cloud, and they're paying for that, and it makes sense to them, whatever. They, like Spotify, have some customers who pay and some who do not, and whatever their business does or does not make sense. I don't really care. But at some point, the capabilities locally will be good enough that those expenses will go down dramatically. And
eventually they'll be back to regular software.
Yeah.
Where there's an initial upfront charge, and then it doesn't cost much after that.
This is tied into this thing we talked about, which it seems unrelated because it's hardware, but it's related, which is AI PCs and Copilot plus PCs are just PCs, right?
Yep.
At some point, we come full circle. We don't have multimedia PCs anymore like we did in the 90s. We don't have media center PCs like we did in the early 2000s. We don't have tablet PCs. We just have a PC, and it does all that stuff.
Yeah.
And look, I have a lot of bills every month, and some of the hardest to justify are, well, my phone case fixation, obviously, but beyond that is these like services. There was a time I was paying for like 4 AI services, and I'm like, I think I'm done with this.
Right.
Although I did order a Pixel, so I'm going to get that for free for a year.
There you go. And that's the Gemini.
I will take an AI handout. That will be my next article. Sir, I would gladly take an AI today for a hamburger tomorrow.
Now, to be clear, you bought the Pixel, but the Gemini AI comes with it.
Well, did I? Because if you do the math on that, they're handing me $17 at the end of this transaction. Like it's kind of crazy.
Because you traded in
$20 a month
trade in.
$240.
The value of Gemini, which I have to pay for anyway for the Google 2 terabyte tier, is $100 a year.
Yeah.
I'd have to think about all that. I get 10% off because I'm a Google One subscriber already. They gave me. I haven't even got. I'm getting the phone today. Supposedly, they already sent me $317 in Google Store credit.
Wow.
What?
I'm getting mine tomorrow.
I ran the numbers for swapping in my 6 for a new one. They were going to give me $200 for the phone, so it's like forget it.
I got $600 for the 8.
Yeah, they gave me $700.
Yeah,
$700. What? It wasn't worth that much new.
Yeah.
Don't tell them. Anyway, so yeah, I mean, look, nothing's perfect, but I will happily watch Gemini flail for the next year and then not pay for it when a year's over. So that's fine.
Marquez did a new update on that phone and said they're finally getting some of the stuff that's actually an assistant showing up in Gemini, but I wonder if it's still actually assistant.
Yeah, so I'm not going to get maybe one of you guys will remember this, but last year when they did the Pixel 8 Pro only at the time, it was the first phone to have an SLM, and it was their Gemini Nano running on device, right? That's and there were two, maybe three features used it, and I think that never changed. If you look back at the last year, it didn't turn into 12, 15 features, a couple of features, and then when they announced the Pixel 9 series, and I don't know if it's all the phones or just the pro level phones, but what was the distinction they made? It's the first, so they already have the on device thing, but there's another level. I know, multimodal. So it's the first multimodal on device LLM built into
graphics,
a phone.
text.
Yeah, so it's not just the text, because I think that's what it was before. I never used it, but it was, it would help you with text messages or whatever. It was a couple of features, like I said. Yeah, so now they're going multimodal, of course, right? And that's how this is going to go. I mean, at some point, AI will be used by everything. It will be so widespread in the phone, it's not even worth talking about.
Yeah.
All we'll care about is that our photos look better, our text messages are, don't have spelling mistakes or whatever it's doing for us, right? And I think that's how this stuff goes.
Is there a feature of the Pixel 9 you're excited about?
No, there is not even one. But
I like the idea that it can listen to phone calls
and do transcription.
And do not just a transcription, but a synopsis.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I look, the weird thing about this phone is that on paper, the camera hardware hasn't actually changed at all on the back.
The zoom is.
The front has.
Yeah.
Now they all four of those lenses are 50-ish megapixels, which Samsung and Apple are not there yet. There'll be a couple of years at least for Apple. So that's cool. But I guess the telephoto lens is in fact a newer, even though it looks the same on paper, it's newer. So it lets in more light. It will give clearer shots from a distance, et cetera. 8K video, meaning upscale 4K video.
Is computational, not hardware, I think, in the camera.
Oh, okay. Yes. Right. That's almost the only change. I mean, for sure. Yep. Yeah. This is going to be, and look, we rode this out. If you were a Pixel fan, there was a period of time when you went like Pixel 4, 4A, 4A 5G, 5A, where that camera hardware went nowhere.
Yeah.
And yet they took awesome photos. So even when it was garbage hardware, they did a great job. There's a lot of headroom now with these lenses, right? So that's okay.
Yeah,
I like the
by
design.
all accounts, the new cameras are pretty damn good in the 9.
Yeah, I think it's going to be good. It was cheap.
I think it's going to be the fall for me. I suspect this 6 hasn't got much life left, and it's starting to go. But
maybe you'll have a Black Friday something. Or,
that's what I'm thinking. Is that
that's the truth.
There'll be a sale
when they first come out. This is true for Samsung too. You get the best trade-in value.
Yeah.
But if you wait a few months, the prices go way
drop.
down.
And once you recognize a trade-in is low for me, it's like, okay, wait for the price break.
Yeah, you're smart. Yeah.
I think the 9 Pro. I don't like the 6.8s. They're too dang big.
See, it's not. It's basically the current Pro and the iPhone Pro Max are both 6.7. So it's like I'm so blind. I couldn't.
At one point,
imagine, I'm like I'd have to wear I have cartographer glasses or something just to see a small screen.
At one point, Google shipped a 6-inch phone. It was so big for the time they called it Beluga.
Was this the 6, the Motorola one, it was Nexus 6?
And I still have it, and it kind of does look big because it's got bezels and
compared to the phones of the day. Like if you look at the the Lumia 1520 was our phone in the Windows phone space like that. And I love that thing, but it was like at the time it was too big.
You got it for the camera. You didn't get it.
Yeah, but and eventually I it took a while, but I really I love that thing. I ended up that in many ways it's not my absolute favorite. It's one of my favorite top 3 Windows phones of all time. But compared to the phones of today, it's like that's cute. It's just it's things have changed, but it's okay. I have big hands. I can do this. Did you have it? You have the I thought you had the phone.
See if it looks big to you.
Yeah, let me see it. So what is the what is it?
How are you?
Oh, it is. Yeah. So this is the 6P or whatever I think was the name of it.
Yeah, it's a Nexus.
Yeah.
So, but it's made by Motorola.
Nice.
That's right.
I mean, even next to the iPhone, which is technically a bigger screen.
Yeah.
I guess just because of
it's still pretty big
form factor. I don't know.
Yeah, the following year they did. It was the last Nexuses. They did the big one was a 6. What was it called? 6P. Maybe that was the 6P. That might be the 6. The 6P was a Huawei phone.
Yeah, this is the 6. I think you're right.
Yeah,
is this what you have? No, you don't
6.
have this, Richard.
No, I have a Pixel 6.
Pixel 6. Yeah, this is a Nexus. That's right.
Yeah,
this was almost as big as the Nexus 7 tablet.
Yeah. It's huge,
which everybody loved. All right,
big phones. That's what we're doing.
Speaking of AI,
we're like old guys sitting on the porch.
I know.
Remember the Nexus
Back in my day.
6?
Yeah,
I used to have.
Well, the fact that you could reach over and pick it up is hilarious. Right? I got it right here.
I got it
know.
right here.
That's why I was like, did he just say he has it?
Yeah,
that's amazing.
I
That's
don't know.
funny.
So, usually they go to somebody. I think nobody wanted it. It was so big.
It's over there now. I have the original iPhone, but I mean that thing's what is it?
I do.
It's
I have the original iPhone.
half a
too. You
screen.
wanna see that?
Yeah, it fits in your nose.
Yeah,
right?
put them
It's
next to
tiny.
each other. I mean, the original iPhone was probably 3.5
This
inches,
might be
something
the
like
3G, not the original.
Yeah, but same,
It's
probably
so
the same
cute.
size. Yeah, look at it. Oh my god!
It's so
Did that ride in a
tiny.
fun little backpack on the Motorola? Is that how you used to carry that around?
Look at that.
Like Yoda carrying being carried
You know,
over?
it's just like dwarfed by Beluga.
Yeah. And that was a big deal at the time. It was all screen. Remember, that was the point.
Oh, it was huge. But
had
now
like an
look
inch
at
bezel at the top
it's
and at
got
the
the
bottom.
lip at the bottom and the forehead at the
The
top.
forehead and the
Say
chin
all
is
screen,
the
but do you
term.
really mean it?
Yeah.
It's funny. Well, the screen part's all screen.
I left this at the studio, and Burke or somebody said, "You can't leave this behind."
Yeah.
So I haven't. It goes.
That's
next to
a
the
piece of
classic
history
rack.
right there.
Yeah. You know what? I have they brought me the original iPod, which is up there next to the clock, there, and then they brought me back that, and it goes right next to
Yeah, there you go. Yep.
the Mac. Yeah, I have. I mean, I think I have room for it.
You go to the American Museum the Museum of American History in the Smithsonian. They have a bunch of these devices there now, and it's
really?
it's freaking me out a little bit that products I've owned
history.
are in a museum.
They're in a museum.
You know?
Yeah,
It's history.
it's very funny.
I might have brought this up. Maybe it was last week. I might have already said this, but somebody on Facebook said, "But where's the Windows? Oh no, where's the Zune?"
Right.
And I said, "It's in our hearts. it's not.
There is a rumor, and I hope this is not true, that Apple is about to release an iPhone, the next iPhone 16, that is basically Zune Brown.
Yeah, I saw that.
It's called Bronze,
Right.
or somebody said,
I think it's ugly.
I've
I've seen it.
really
It's
ugly.
Yeah.
The Brown Zune was.
I liked the brown Zune. It was
It was like a loafer or
different.
something.
Yeah,
right?
it
It
was-
was just it had a different vibe.
it was encased almost on lucite. It had a weird level thing, which I thought was kind of fun, but
this new iPhone, let me see if I can find it.
it's ugly.
It is. But it's a rumor, and it could well be
Yeah, it might be wrong.
It might have been
just
true.
just wrong. I hope it. I pray. They Desert Titanium, I think they
Right.
Mac rumors. It's called.
Better than desert excrement.
It looks like it's been buried in mud.
Well, that looks great, but that's not what it looks like.
No. Where can I find a
where's
real
that thing?
image of this thing?
There's probably a link to it in there somewhere. It's awful.
It's
Let's look at brown iPhone. That would
yeah.
do it.
It's just here it
It's
is.
terrible.
This is the all four. There
Yeah,
it
there
is,
you go.
next to the others. It looks like it
has
fell into the mud.
It's like a
pit,
leather case or something.
Yeah.
which Apple no longer offers.
Right.
This is just a leak, so we don't know.
Yeah, I hope it's wrong. I thought the titanium thing was ridiculous looking, but I got one and I actually kind of love it. It's kind of, I don't know, it's goofy, but
I like titanium. It's just
Yeah.
gray, but it's it's my watch is my band is
Yeah,
titanium.
nice.
It's just a nice gray, I think.
Yep.
Better than brown.
I agree.
What else?
Okay.
All right, what else? So a couple of weeks ago, sometime we were talking about AMD earnings and how their data center stuff is exploding. They're doing great there. And it looks like they're trying to make a run. In fact, we were talking, maybe these guys are trying to be the next NVIDIA. Well, that's official because they announced this week they were buying ZT Systems, which is they make hyperscale servers for cloud computing and AI for $4.9 billion. So this is their data center AI play. Good timing, by the way, guys. We're moving everything down to the client now, so I'm sure this will be great. But No, I do think that part of the market is wide open, and actually, this kind of competition is what will drive prices down there as well. So we'll see.
Yeah, but their performance AI chip, the ZT Systems, is actually based on the Microsoft Olympus platform. So I wonder if they were planning on being bought by Microsoft, and things have gone a little wonky that way.
Microsoft's trying to spread themselves, when it comes to this stuff. Like if you look at their data center chip type stuff, they're doing some stuff in house, but they're kind of working with everybody.
They're trying to come up with as many options as possible, right?
Yeah. Yep. Well, it was like, I think it was you who pointed out, maybe it was it must have been Tech Ed. Yeah, right, Paul. Ignite last November, where Satya Nadella was like, we want to thank our partners at NVIDIA and blah, blah, they're great. We love them. And here's everything we're going to use to replace them. And then they just started talking about,
but wait, let me drag the CEO out there to stand there while I talk about
jacket, buddy. They're great. Okay, we're going to replace those idiots. And like, it was a weird transition.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, which is absolutely.
Like I said, I'm kind of enjoying Dark Satya like that when that pops up and does his thing.
Yep. Did anyone else catch that red flash? I don't know what happened. And this isn't related to anything, but I love this kind of thing. And with the understanding, I'll never actually use it myself. But the Raspberry Pi Foundation, it was almost a year ago, last September, I think they came out with 2 versions of the then new Raspberry Pi 5, right? So 4 and 8 gigs of RAM. The 8 gig one is kind of a computer, by the way, right?
It's really quite a computer. It's got a lot of horsepower.
So apparently the prices were too expensive because the 4 gig is still $60, and I think the 8 gig is probably $80. But they just came out with a 2 gig version for $50,
which is probably plenty, right?
Depending on what you're doing. We probably talked about this 2 weeks ago, months ago, whatever. They announced like a hat, a little hardware add-on you can put on any Raspberry 5 that adds. It's like an AI coprocessor MPU. It was low, not. I don't remember the exact thing, a 711, top, something like that, whatever it was. But, a way for like an enthusiast or even a kid, a learner, whatever, to kind of, play around with that stuff. So this will work with that. And then the way they save money is fascinating to me. I mean, obviously less RAM, you save money there. But the other half of it is they get their chips from Broadcom, and the chip that they use, this ARM-based, I think it's 64-bit ARM chip, has stuff on it for other types of businesses, but for general computing, they don't need that stuff. So they disable it in the silicon, but it's still there. And because it's there, it's more expensive. It's still more, you still have to manufacture it. You still have to build the thing. So they have a new version of that processor. So it's not really a new processor. It's just a new version where they've actually removed the stuff that they disable.
Right.
So now it's cheaper to make. So they actually save money to it. That's pretty cool.
This is, look at the specs on this thing.
It's pretty torquey.
Dual 4K 60p HDMI displays.
Yeah.
I know. It's cool.
Dual band 802.11 AC Wi-Fi, Bluetooth 5 BLE.
Yeah, Wi-Fi I think was the big one. For a long time you had to get Wi-Fi somehow, like USB probably or whatever, and now it's just kind of built in. 2
USB 3 ports.
Yep.
Gigabit Ethernet.
I mean, this is better than some laptops I use. In fact, for compared to Meteor Lake, this is probably pretty competitive.
Yeah.
It's probably more reliable.
$50.
Yeah. Well,
unbelievable.
You strap it to the back of a monitor, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And then it's just a question of what software you run
Strap
on
it onto a drone. Put it in the, it's they could put it in all kinds of stuff. That's the point, right? It's, for makers or whatever. It's cool.
Yeah.
I just don't have I can't.
What's availability though? That's part of the problem.
So that's apparently gotten a lot better. That delayed the original Pi. Remember they had big problems during the pandemic.
Right. No, the CM4.
Oh no, I could buy it right now from
I think you could. Yeah, I think so. I mean, I'd have to get all the gigs if I was going to get this thing, but you know what I'm saying. It's
You're talking between $50 or $80, right? Like for $80
for 8
get the
gigs.
full load.
I know. It's neat. If Windows 11 on ARM full version, if they just threw it on this thing, which they could do, they don't, by the way, but they should.
They used to. You used to be able to get these with Windows.
There's a version, but it's really an IoT version, and it doesn't have a desktop. It's just it's designed. You run an app, and you interact with it usually from a command line or something. It's not meant to be a general purpose.
I'm just going to buy it because I figure I can strap it to one of the monitors in here, and something will happen.
Yeah, you throw Linux on it with a host app. Like that's my Pi holes are a couple of Raspberry Pi 4s without the GUI installed.
Yeah, it's a good use.
It's just a web server to access.
It's good. This is several years ago, but I bought one of these and a case that looked like an Amiga 500, and I put an Amiga emulator on it with all the games, and I gave it to a friend for Christmas. Who was an Amiga fan back in the day, right? The whole thing was, maybe $100 or whatever at the time. I don't know.
And he plugs it into his screen and turns it on, does the bouncy ball thing, gets all, nostalgic.
That's the last time he ever uses it. But you know what? It was a gift. Who cares? It looks cute. It sits up on his thing.
Yeah. Should take up space.
I am not confusing the Pico 2. No, the Pi 5 originally came out last September. The Pi 5 with 2 gigs is what just came out this week.
Yeah.
All right. I don't know if anyone noticed this, but before
we go to the Google thing, may I interrupt? Just
of course. I'm sorry. Did I jump past I didn't mean to do that.
Yeah, no, it's
fine. In orange and everything.
I know. It's actually obvious now that I'm looking at it. Sorry. I'm sorry.
Just ignore the ads. We don't need no stinking ads.
It didn't sync to the cloud. That's what happened. Sorry
you know what? We've had no ads for so long that you're probably just don't
keep talking
understand what's happening right now. Sorry. Our show today brought to you by 1Password. This is a great story, actually. Kolide, Kolide, is a longtime sponsor. We announced a few months ago that the 1Password had acquired them. Now, the result of this, the child of this beautiful alliance is born. It's called 1Password's Extended Access Management. Now, here's the problem it solves. A question for you, IT professionals. Do your end users always work on company-owned devices with IT-approved apps? Of course not. So how do you keep your company's data safe when it's sitting on unmanaged apps and devices? That's where you need 1Password Extended Access Management. It helps you secure every sign-in for every app on every device. It literally solves problems traditional IAM, even MDM can't touch. They say your company's security is like the quadrangle of a college campus. The kind of, let's just imagine the platonic ideal. It's a beautiful green lawn there and ivy-covered brick buildings, and on the lawn there's nice paved paths leading from building to building, curving beautifully. That's the company-owned devices, the IT-approved apps, the managed employee identities. But then, on every quadrangle, it's the case, there are these dirt paths that people actually use, the shortcuts between the straightest point between the buildings A and B, right across the beautiful grass, just worn a path. Unfortunately, those are the unmanaged devices, the shadow IT apps, the non-employee identities, the contractors and so forth on your network. Most security tools really like those happy paved paths with the ivy-covered buildings. They live in this kind of fantasy world, but the truth is most of the security problems, they happen on the mud shortcuts. That's why you need 1Password Extended Access Management. It's the first security solution that brings all those unmanaged devices, all those apps, all those identities under your control. It makes sure that every user credential is strong and protected. Every device known and healthy. That's important, by the way, because you can have a device that has an unpatched browser or an unpatched operating system. Do you know now? You don't. But you will with 1Password. This is so cool. Every app visible. It's security for the way we work today, and it's awesome because it doesn't treat your end users as the enemy. It treats them as allies who are going to help you keep your stuff secure. It's now generally available to companies with Okta and Microsoft Entra. Oh, this is new. They've got it on Entra now. And it's in beta for Google Workspace customers. They said it was coming. Wow, it's here. So Okta and Entra in beta for Google Workspace. I think now's the time to go to 1password.com/Windows Weekly. That's 1PASSWORD, the number 1 password.com/Windows Weekly. Well, now you really have to try it. 1password.com/Windows Weekly. 1Password Extended Access Management. It's an idea whose time has come.
Something more important than this podcast happened.
Yes.
UPS came, and I normally my wife would just get that, but I could hear her. She was on the phone. So
What'd you get?
This is the Pixel.
It came already?
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
I know, it's pretty good.
That's really cool.
I can do an unboxing here.
Wow.
It looks. Oh, it's a phone. That's funny. Anyway, yeah.
Who would have thunk?
Yep.
Wow, yours came early because it's supposed to be August 22nd. That's nice. I got the text from FedEx that I need to sign for something tomorrow, and I think, did yours come from Pennsauken Township, New Jersey?
It's funny you say that because there was I was just saying this to my wife earlier today, like there's so much data about where this thing was in any point in time that it's kind of astonishing. Like this thing has traveled more in the past 24 hours than I will in the next 6 weeks. Like it's
China to the U.S. to Pennsauken Township.
No, but just in the past 24 hours, it's like you can get this. Like I'd have to sign in, but there's a detailed thing. It was like it went to wherever, New Jersey, and then Easton, and then left Easton, then went to Bethlehem, then went to a processing center in Bethlehem. Was on a truck at 9:30. It was out. It's like this whole like. Do we really need this much information? I mean,
mine arrived at 10:26 p.m. today at Pennsauken Township. Left
in
Pennsauken
Pennsylvania.
at 12 noon. Yeah. Well, it says New Jersey, but that sounds like Pennsylvania.
It went through New Jersey. Yeah. So it's
it
maybe
was
that's
picked
why
up in Belmar, New Jersey this morning.
Yep.
I hope that's it. It might be something else. I don't know. It could be.
No, I bet that's it because mine did too. And
it feels like it. Yeah.
And I could drive there in 45 minutes, so that probably makes sense.
That's why you got it.
It took it from 9. So it took it 6 hours to get here, but for me, I could do it in 45.
Mine's on a plane cross country right now.
Somewhere.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah, they should have put a Apple AirTag in the box. Oh, no.
Touchy subject there.
So tell me, well, I guess you can't really play with it now. I mean, that would be inappropriate.
It looks like a phone. I can tell you that.
Okay.
Or I could show you the phone, I guess.
Oh, pretty.
It has
Which one did you get? Which color did you get?
The hazel. God, I love hazel. I hated that they didn't have it last year. That was the color I had for the 7 as well.
Kind of a washed out gray green.
Yeah, it's good.
I got the black
covered up with
obsidian. Black as night, none blacker.
Black like my heart.
Yes. All right, moving on. Enough of that. Google.
Speaking of Google,
let's talk about AI. Yeah.
As we were. So last week, obviously, they had the big
the antitrust. Yeah.
This is one of the other ones. It's not that one, but they also lost against Epic. And Epic, you may recall, I don't remember when this was, a couple of months ago, 3 months ago, whatever. Epic submitted a filing that was like fan fiction. They were like, if you were the judge, like what would the ruling you would give about, it was hilarious. Like, so
that's when you actually have
unless you're Google, because the judge was like, you know what? I think I'm just going to do this.
Wow.
The only thing he kind of said no to was some of the oversight type stuff. He has not come down yet and said what it's going to be, but they had a hearing with lawyers for both companies. And my God, did this guy come after Google hard. Like, it's very clear he's going to be really, like, it's going to be bad for Google. And this, some of the quotes, I'll just read a couple of these. It's beautiful. Google wants to spread this out. It's going to take a long time. It's expensive. And he goes, you're Google. You can do better than that. And he's
nice.
Like, it's like, he says, the world that exists today is the product of monopolistic misconduct. That world is changing. When you build a fence to keep everyone out, there's going to be a stampede when you finally open the gate. But you shouldn't have built the fence in the first place. It's because it's like it's crazy.
This is a big loss.
Google's lawyers literally said, trying to prove that they were good overseers of the store. If the American Nazi Party came to the store, I mean, we would say no to those guys.
Oh, well, good. Okay.
And the judge is like,
that's the bar, huh?
The reason we are here is because you are the only company that has that power. Our job is not to continue that power. The fact that you would do that is whatever, but it's like we're taking that power away. So that's actually really interesting. So he says, look, you built a mountain of bad conduct and we're going to move that mountain. So that's what's going to happen.
Yeah.
I have no intention of having a highly detailed decree that ends up impairing competition. The whole point of this is to grow a garden of competing app stores. Wow. It's beautiful.
It
so
is. It's poetry.
It's going to be interesting. we'll see. I don't know. I think we're probably still a few months out until AI can write his little summary, but whatever happens, there was nothing that came out of this hearing that would make Google think we're probably going to be okay.
It's worse than you think. I think it's probably
it's
the
not
better
good.
assessment.
Yeah, it's not good. So there you go. It's kind of like, what was that stupid? What's a stupid? God, I don't think those movies that came out of like fan fiction for Twilight, and then it became like a big book, and then they became successful movies. And I don't remember what they were called. They had nothing to do with vampires by the time they came out, but it's like that. Like Epic wrote this hilarious rendition of what they thought should happen, and he didn't say this, but the judge was basically like, "Yep, that's what we're doing." It's just like, yeah, nice. So we'll see.
Crazy.
I don't want to spend too much time on this. This is not interesting to too many people. But last week I did mention that Visual Studio 2022 1711 went to general availability. Mm-hmm. That was the version I had been using in preview to work with .NET 9, also in preview. And what happened after the show was I spent the next 36 hours breaking every single install of Visual Studio I had because Microsoft screwed something up. And this was my first experience firsthand with something that Raphael has been complaining to me for 10 years probably, where they just don't seem to sometimes know what they're doing. Like, so there's actually a block of XML, but there's a crucial line of XML you have to put into your app.xaml file in a WPF project if you want to modernize it for Windows 11.
Yeah. And
they changed the string a little bit. Didn't tell anybody. So I, like an idiot, upgraded Visual Studio on 5-6 computers, upgraded to the latest version of the .NET 9 Preview 7. And then subsequently, everything I was writing was breaking everywhere on every computer. It wasn't ARM, it wasn't x86, it was like everything. And I'm like, what is going on? And I got into their, like the GitHub-based announcement, and I saw someone was complaining about exactly the same thing. So it wasn't me. And I piled on. I was like, yep, I'm seeing this in, multiple architectures, blah, 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 whatever. But I woke up the next morning to someone had figured out how to fix it. And then Microsoft does what Microsoft does. We were just talking about this. They went back to a June 7th post for recall and just changed it, right? At least they put a date and said they changed it. What they did in this case is they went back to a May post about .NET 9 Preview 4, and they changed the URL that they documented. But yikes! Like rewrote history.
How do you find this?
I don't know. But the thing that bugs me is, like, since that day, so this has been 3 months, they've never formally written or made a video or discussed anywhere anything about this. Like, it
does make sense to take the bad URL down.
Yep.
But then
have a little note says, this is why, whatever. Yeah. Guys, come on. So yeah, and I've been running it. There are these limitations with WPF that have actually existed for decades, and I'm kind of hitting that wall. So I engaged with Raphael to try to get over the hump, but he actually went in and looked at the bug reports, and he was like, everything that you told me has been reported as an issue, and they've never fixed it. Like, they actually have known about this for a long time, and I don't understand how they could possibly ship this thing in November now. Like, they just took this community project.
It is in August. So
I know it's halfway. We're halfway though. Like, there's been no movement. The only thing they've done in those 3 months is change that URL, change the XAML, not a URL, but whatever, it's a line of XAML. I don't know. So anyway,
it wouldn't be the first time they've slipped stuff out of the release, right?
That stinks because I really wanted this. Like, and look, you can flip the switch, you get the buttons and this light theme and blah blah blah.
It's gonna come. It's just gonna be. It might be later. I mean, we don't know for
Christmas, but dude, come on, man. Like, I don't know.
There's usually another .NET Conf in the spring, and then they sort of pick up stuff that didn't make it to the November event.
Yeah.
Somewhere in April. So it would surprise me if they do that.
Yeah. If that's what it is, that's fine. What I don't want to hear is like, you know what? This is more work than we thought. .NET 10, baby. Like, guys, please, come on. Like, I spent so much time on this year.
Yeah. No, they needed this. This isn't going anywhere. I wouldn't expect. Who knows? I'm just surprised
there's been so little communication. Like, and by so little, I mean zero.
Well, it's summertime. Like,
come on, man. Like this is, but .NET, like you did a podcast about this.
Yep.
There's more information in that podcast that Microsoft has released combined. Like,
well, that's because we had Joe Finney, and Joe Finney knows his stuff and was able to.
I got to talk to him. If just to vent, just to have him be like,
for the pain. Yeah, no, you're not crazy. That's pain.
Yep. I spent 2 hours babbling at Raphael yesterday.
Honestly, I have a tough time finding the WPF lead. I should spend more energy on that. So, like, who's leading this?
I know. Who is it?
Yeah.
That's a good question. I don't know. Oh, well.
I should do better. I apologize.
Yeah, no, the problem is you, Richard. Yeah. When I look at the stack, I think to myself, if it wasn't for this little guy over here in the Jenga thing, this whole thing would be stable. No, it's not.
No. Well, and just because you said it, back in the build time frame, hey, we're, WPF's a full citizen and it's going to be good. It's like,
that's the point.
Where are those guys?
The thing is, it's not going to be, I mean, even if they fix the things I've talked about, or I didn't even talk about them. There's so many things, but there's just like stuff that's been broken for a long time that is not related to Windows 11 theming. But it prevents it from working properly. Right.
Yeah.
Or just something like, my app will conform to the theme, but I can't flip a switch that says, actually, I want this app to be in dark mode, even though the OS is in light mode.
Right.
Like, that's not a capability. They're just sensing the theme and using it, which is great. I mean, it's, better than nothing, but a real app would also, offer that. And that issue was reported in December 2023 when they first, were working on this behind the scenes, and no one's even looked at it. It hasn't been assigned to anybody. It hasn't been updated. It's just sitting out there unfixed. Yeah. So not a big deal. But
still unfixed.
Except to me, it's
a big freaking deal.
Three other people care about this. I don't know. Anyway.
Okay.
All right. Before we get to the highlight of the show, whiskey. No, Xbox.
That hurt, but fine.
Let us pause, shall we, for a word for another sponsor. Unbelievable. Our show today brought to you by, this is a good one, BigID. Data security is everything, right? But now you got to fortify against even bigger problems. All custodians of data, especially modern CISOs, need proactive solutions. But there's good news. BigID. With BigID, you can trust that your most valuable asset, your data, is secured. As a CISO, your job is to ensure the promise of AI doesn't become a nightmare, a security pitfall. BigID's Gen AI solutions help you navigate the labyrinthine world of AI from the CISO perspective. With BigID, you can leverage solutions that take a defense-in-depth approach to automating manual processes, to improving accuracy and actionability, and applying AI and ML to cut through the noise, to improve risk management, and to enable a robust data security strategy. BigID lets you find and classify your data accurately and at scale, no matter where it is, on-prem, in the cloud, structured, unstructured, semi-structured. It could be in zip files, covering hundreds of data sources. You can make sure that you're training AI only on data that's safe to use. You can minimize your attack surface through policy-driven retention management, removing redundant and outdated data when it's okay to do so, audit and inspect what data is being shared with AI, and be alerted when usage policies are breached. So you have your finger on the pulse. You know exactly what's happening. And some of the clients of BigID are very, very, big, impressive. Telenor, for instance, they use BigID to show their customers they're handling data in a secure way. If you're a telecom these days, you kind of want to do that. Telenor said, here's a quote: "We want to solve customer problems and regulatory demands. We want to focus on the business and have a partner like BigID to focus on the tech. We want a partner that understood what we're doing and can help us. Companies who use BigID," this is the quote, this is it, this is the one. "Companies who use BigID are showing they're taking data seriously," like Telenor. BigID's won numerous awards, including Market Leader in Data Security Posture Management in the Global InfoSec Awards from Cyber Defense Magazine. They won Best Data Security Company in the Cybersecurity Excellence Awards, Best Data Security Company. And they have a coveted spot in the Citizens Jump Cyber 66 report, which recognizes BigID for elevating data management and security with first-of-its-kind AI technology. I think you need to know these guys. Start protecting your sensitive data wherever your data lives at bigid.com/Windows. Get a free demo. See how BigID can help your organization reduce data risk and accelerate the adoption of generative AI. Again, that's bigid.com/Windows. Also, by the way, lots of white papers there. There's a new free report that provides valuable insights and key trends on AI adoption, challenges the overall impact of Gen AI across organizations. Food for thought, stuff you need to know. And it's all courtesy BigID. bigid.com/Windows. I want you to check them out. bigid.com/Windows. We thank them so much for their support of Windows Weekly. And back to the show with the most important part of all.
Okay.
The Xbox
This is
segment.
an unusually big Xbox section.
Good. I'm just going to take a walk. I'll be back. No, I love this stuff because I'm sitting across from my Xbox. I'm ready. I want to play.
Yeah, so Microsoft showed up at this big game show, and but it was in Germany, but not Berlin. Where is it? I can't remember. It doesn't matter. Somewhere else in Germany. Stuttgart? No.
Hamburg.
Frankfurt. Hamburg. What does it matter? Who cares? Anyway,
it's in Cologne. You're talking about
Cologne. Thank you.
Yeah,
yes,
gamescom.
right. Yes, thank you. So earlier this summer, they didn't announce. Or did they? No, I don't think they announced. I think it just appeared in their support site. But they're basically replacing Xbox Game Pass, which was the best, biggest one they had, with something called Xbox Game Standard. This will basically be the same offering, a little more expensive, and you won't get day one games, right? Which was the big kind of sticking point. And then they've been kind of quiet on this ever since. So as of today, or I think today, if you are in the Xbox Insider program, you can test Xbox Game Standard. You actually have to pay for it, interestingly, but you only pay $1 before it goes. I think it's probably going to go live in October. And this is, like I said, it takes over for the Xbox Game Pass tier. So this core at the low end, which is $9.99 a month, that's the old Xbox Live Gold, where you get a catalog of 25 games. The standard tier, what used to be Xbox Game Pass, is the new kind of big one, I guess. Hundreds of games, multiplayer online. Actually, that's new, by the way. Discounts when you buy things, etc. But $14.99 a month. PC Game Pass went up just a little bit, but is unchanged, $11.99 functionally, and then Ultimate is unchanged as well, and it went up to is going up to $19.99 per month, right? So these are the new tiers, and also tiers of the other kind because they got rid of day one. And separately, I don't think this is
Tears of the Clown.
Yeah, Tears of I'm definitely a clown in my case. I don't think this is in our story, but they were saying that depending on the game, it could be up to 1 year before a AAA title will appear in Game Pass after its general release. So that's the general strategy.
And that's them just trying to make sure they get the money from the game that they should reasonably expect for a tier 1 game.
Yeah. The thing is, it's reasonable, right? I mean, people ran the numbers. They were like, we're never going to make money on this. And then they just kind of rolled this out without really explaining themselves. And I also feel like they could have given out a couple little perks to make people feel a little bit better about it, but they just didn't say anything, which is kind of the problem. Because it is Gamescom, they showed off a bunch of games and they were playable, right? That was kind of the big deal. Like if you went to the show, you could walk onto the show floor and play all these games. So, Doom Dark Ages, the new Indiana Jones movie, et cetera, et cetera. There's a bunch of stuff. This, if you were bored of walking around a planet in Starfield, they're giving you a truck. So
Nice.
now you can drive around.
The game that
kind of
never finishes.
Exactly. Yeah. Right. When do I win? Oh, I die? I see.
You'll drive forever in the truck, but at least you'll have a truck. Right?
But you have a truck. Yep. The big news in some ways is that the Indiana Jones game is going to be available on PlayStation as well, confirming rumors and fears and, triggering another round of angst. I don't.
This doesn't look that good. Is it just me or?
It's not a Halo problem, but I see what you're saying. Yeah,
it's
because he looks vaguely like the actor, but not really. So it's not. It's weird how every once in a while there'll be a close up of his face at some angle where you're like, oh yeah, no, I can see it now. But a lot
problem
like
is
right
we know him so well that
this looks like a different person.
Yeah.
So I don't know. What are you gonna? I don't know.
Did they get at least Harrison Ford's voice?
He'll only look right. No, they didn't. He'll only look right on PlayStation. So no, I don't. So Phil Spencer discussed this. He was at the show, obviously, and he kind of said, "Look, we just want more people to be able to play more games in more places, and that's better for everyone." And yep. I mean, yeah, but this is like people are freaking over this kind of stuff. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. So remember there were 3 games I think they did before, or I guess it was 4 across Nintendo and PlayStation. And now this has been rumored for a couple of months. And even though at the time they first announced this, they said, no, this is Xbox.
Starfield looks really good, actually.
Starfield does look really good. Yep.
Yeah.
Just drive over the flag on the moon and cackle like a madman and drive off and ruin it for everybody.
Low gravity driving is so much fun.
Yeah. I mean, that looks like Halo Warthog stuff.
I was going to say, it's a very Warthog-y, yeah.
Yeah. Which is great. I mean, that's fun.
All right.
Anyway, there's that. And then what else we got? So Microsoft also earlier this year announced that they would be releasing, I'm going to call them console refreshes for lack of a better term. I'm not sure. They're just the same thing again. I don't know, but they're all digital. No, 2 of them are all digital. So there's a Xbox Series S. There are 2. Sorry. There's an Xbox Series S, all digital, white, looks exactly like the original. 1 terabyte, though, double the storage, robot white. 350 basically, and then 2 Series X machines, one of which is all digital, so that's a first for that. Also in white, same form factor as the current X, 449 in 1 terabyte as well. And then there's a 2 terabyte black, actually Galaxy Black Special Edition Xbox Series X with a optical drive for $600. And that one has kind of a fun Xbox green back plate, and the controller has the green back as well. It's beautiful.
All digital meaning no drive then.
Yeah. So some guy on Mastodon or Twitter or whatever these stupid things are, who was like, so it's all digital, but it's like it's not like the analog, disc was, or the the optical disc was analog, and I'm like,
right.
Yeah, it's physical media versus digital. He's like, so if you put it on a hard drive, I mean, isn't that
also
physical? I was like,
so why do you talk to these?
Why
people?
Are you in this industry? I don't anymore. I muted that guy. But
and hopefully they are switching to SSDs inside of the Xbox.
I'm sorry, they're SSDs. They're not hard drive.
Yeah.
This is what I'm just.
So it's the Xbox no spinning media edition.
There you go. Okay, that
sounds good to me.
That's a good way. I'm going to give you his address so you can send that to him.
That'll clarify everything. Right?
I was just. Listen, I get being pedantic, but try not to be stupid about it. I mean, what? Come on.
Yeah.
Okay, and then they also released a bunch of new Xbox Adaptive accessibility accessories. That's right.
I just pushed a button and Richard got very tiny.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
I'm going away. Okay, I didn't see it, but I assume that's what I would have sounded like. So, look, this stuff is just cool, right? There's an amazing range of peripherals that they have. One of these things, they're giving out 3D printer designs for the thumbsticks, so you can adjust the weight and the height and width if you want to or need to. Right? I mean, this stuff's cool.
This whole line has been a hit.
Yep, it's
Help
incredible.
I'm small.
And
you're both small.
Yeah, you're both small, but the Xbox is big.
I think they stumbled into this almost by accident, and they've just run with it. As soon as it's like, what if we made an adaptive controller? What would it look like? And then they took all the feedback and just went wild. And then
I think
it's amazing.
There's some work like this that's in the Surface business. They're doing something like that. And actually, the new Surface, the Pro keyboard, the Flex keyboard, and I think one of the normal keyboards, there's that opportunity for the bigger keycaps, right? So the letters are bigger. It's good for people with low vision. And of course, if they're backlit, so they're bigger in the dark too.
Yeah.
So this stuff's great, but I mean, Xbox so far has really led the charge here at Microsoft. Like this is the rare area where
those guys in the design lab, like they need a medal. Like they're just doing such good work.
Yeah.
And the nice thing about the whole 3D print approach to this too is you can do it on your inexpensive little PLA printer at home until you get it right.
Right.
And then you ship that file off to a service and it's like, I'd like this in aluminum, please. Yeah,
that's
right. Whatever material you want.
Yep. Really neat.
Yeah. It's very cool.
Yep. Yeah, I love it. So that's cool. And this was just the other day, so it wasn't like it was last week, but we're past the halfway point for August. So now they've announced new Xbox Game Pass titles, and you would think this would be awesome, Gamescom, et cetera, et cetera. It's not. There are only 3 games, but one of them is they're going to bring Call of Duty Black Ops 6 preview, the open beta, to people who are on Game Pass. I think it starts on it's later in the month. Is it?
This is smart. This gets people to sign up for Game Pass.
This is really good.
Exclusive access to something.
Yeah, so 2 months ahead of the game, you'll be able to play some of it. Like it won't be the whole game, obviously, but multiplayer, online, whatever it is. Neat. And there was a period of time there where they do this every year, but with the exclusivity thing they had with Sony for a few years there, it was like PlayStation and wait 2-3 weeks and then, okay, Xbox guys, pick up the leftovers, welcome in. So now it's going to be on Xbox right away, which is cool. Neat. It has been on Xbox right away for a couple of years, I should say, but because, Microsoft owns it now. So obviously
it's more equal.
It's equaler. I'm a writer.
Equal-ish.
No, yes, it's equal to something. Yeah. You guys may recall, as part of their negotiations to acquire Activision Blizzard, they opened up some of their gaming service stuff, Xbox Game Pass, games, et cetera, to other services. And one of the big beneficiaries is GeForce Now, which does streaming, obviously, and maybe not obviously they do streaming. And now they're just simplifying the process of signing in, right? So if you're playing an Xbox game, you can link your Xbox account to GeForce Now, and then you'll just be right in. So that's going to start tomorrow. You don't have to sign in to your Microsoft account every single time you start streaming the PC version of an Xbox game,
right?
Which is the way it worked before, apparently. So that's good. And game streaming, I don't know. I'm not sure if I'm sold on that personally. And actually, I should have put this in the antitrust section, but Epic Games threatened and then did launch their mobile app store thanks to antitrust action around the world. It's available now on Android and iPhone, and I think iPad too, actually, iOS, but on Android, you can get it anywhere, right? Because it's Android, but on iOS, you have to be in the EU because,
because reasons.
Yeah, and there's a complicated little process you have to go through, which, Epic has kind of lashed out at Google for, at least. I live in the United States, so I can't test the Apple bit of it, but I did throw this thing on my Samsung Galaxy S24, and it does look like you're permitting it to install malware. I mean, it's like the language that Google provides is like, yikes, but if you've ever sideloaded a game on Android, which you've been able to do for years, you might be semi-familiar.
It's probably the same language, right?
It's a little, so it's a little nicer looking. It's
scary.
like there were panes that come up. Like before, you had to go into, you had to do something to like multi-click something,
switch
turn
to
on developer settings.
mode.
It's not that scary. Like you actually do. It's kind of a,
but it's also is all this language about protecting the user, about scaring them off.
Scaring them off. Yeah.
Yep. So back to the antitrust
could do this,
thing.
but
by the way,
really scary thing to do.
The only explicit security that occurred there in this entire process is when I had to sign into my account. That took I had to go through 2FA for that. I'm like, what are we worried about here?
Tell me why we're in danger exactly.
Yeah, I mean my Epic account, to be clear about that. I mean, they have their account is secured really well. So yeah, it's like for your security, your phone currently isn't allowed to install unknown apps. You can change this in settings. Thanks. Not click here to change. They're trying to make you not do it.
Yep.
The gameplay is great. I mean, of course it does. It's Fortnite, I should say. And there aren't that many games yet, but Fortnite, Rocket League, Sideswipe, and Fall Guys, which is brand new, are all available on both stores, and they're opening it up to third parties. Of course, Apple will probably cancel their developer account. We'll go back and forth, but it's happening. So enjoy that. before that happened, we might have talked about this a little bit, but I had been playing like modern AAA games on this normal laptop with an AMD chipset in it. And I do have this new iPad Air, and I'm thinking, I've seen Call of Duty Mobile. I've gone in and out a couple times. Like, there must be like AAA games happening on this platform, right? And there are. And it's not, I don't think Nintendo doesn't really make that kind of game, but like, Sony and Microsoft don't have a lot to worry about there per se. But Call of Duty Mobile, for example, or Call of Duty Warzone Mobile, these games have evolved pretty dramatically, and these tablets can display graphics as good as any console at high frame rate, and you attach a controller and it just works. And the games themselves are sophisticated. They're not the same games you play on console or PC, but it's very clear that if they wanted to, and I think they might, there's no reason in the same way that today you're an Xbox, you could play against a PlayStation guy, a PC guy. We're going to be playing against iPad and iPhone guys. There's no doubt about it. It's there. Like, it's kind of amazing. I will say the selection of this kind of game is actually better on the iPad than it is on the Mac.
Nice.
For example, not the low bar, but it's the type of thing that I think would take off. And as I was saying to Brad the other day, like, if you're on a plane, you got 4 hours to kill, whatever, you could read, watch a movie, play Call of Duty, mm-hmm. Or Alien Isolation or whatever these other games are. Like, there's a bunch of them. So anyway, just something to look into if you have an iPad kicking around, you're not doing anything with, throw a controller on it. I think you might be surprised.
Yeah. If you like playing with controller.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yep. You can look. When I made the transition from keyboard mouse, well, first of all, I made the transition from keyboard to keyboard mouse because of Quake, right? And Quick Look, and you can use one and look around as you run straight, that kind of thing. You start getting killed by those guys on the PC, and you're like, I have to learn this. It was hard.
Yeah.
And then when I transitioned from that to a controller with the 360, so 2005, 2006. That was hard,
Yeah,
I'm done doing this. I'm done transitioning. So there's no way I'm going to sit there and, play with I can't, I played Fortnite on a phone. I had to be this close to it. Like, I can't do it, but the iPad screens, in fact, if anything, I'm done transitioning. That's not what I meant. I'm never done transitioning. No, you could connect this thing to a display. Like a big, this could be something. We'll see. So anyway,
it's a hell of a processor, right?
Yeah. And then if you have an iPad Pro, it's even better. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I apologize. I should go find it. Somebody reminded me of this in the Discord chat, and I actually had put this. I've been so kind of sick today. I haven't written as much as I wanted to. So this was on my to-do list. But Atari has announced a new version of the 78 video game console. So this is, so for collectors or people who are into this stuff, this is kind of well known. But for the general public, a lot of people are not aware that this existed. So obviously there was a 2600, the classic, a VCS, and then there was a 5200, which had arcade quality graphics, but that horrible controller, and the cartridges were incompatible. So to play 2600 games, you had to get an adapter, right? And Atari changed hands. Jack Trammell bought the company, and they started releasing they did the XE game system, and they did some new 8-bit computers, but they also released this thing, which had been sitting there for a while, called the 7800, and it cartridge compatible to 2600. So we play all the old games, 2600 old games. A decent controller without a keypad on it, but not the classic Atari joystick, although that worked fine. And now the company that is Atari today is releasing a new version of this console, just like they did with the 2600.
It's got a sort of nostalgic retro.
I like it.
It's modern too, right?
Yep. So it comes with this kind of controller that looks a little bit like a simplistic Nintendo controller that I think Atari sold in Europe a million years ago, but not here. But you can get a normal Atari controller. You can get the paddles, right? Mm-hmm. It actually plays the cartridges. So it's not like a Raspberry Pi with an emulator, although it probably actually is, but it actually plays the cartridges as well, which I think is the selling point. And they're selling.
Well, from a retro perspective, but cartridges, nobody has old ones. You have to buy new ones.
Yeah. Well, you can, obviously they're out there, like people collect these things and so forth, but they're actually selling brand new cartridges. Wow. And in some cases there's a bunch of Atari 2600 games. Those all play. There's a new Atari 7800 games, including like I think it's the Crystal Quest game, which is like a sequel to a game that was a big deal in the 80s, written by the guy who wrote the game, but it's brand new. Like it's actually a new game. This is kind of cool. Like I might actually, against my stupidity.
I mean, why make a cartridge when it could have been a USB key? You know, much less just NVM on the machine and load it from the.
So I would have to go look at the specs of this thing more closely. Like I said, I meant to write this up today, but I wouldn't be surprised if this thing also supported what you just described. Right? Because there is this whole. Let me just it's use So it's the charging cable is USB-C.
Right.
And but it doesn't actually say, but obviously HDMI out is that's the big trick. If you buy a legacy console from the 80s,
try and plug composite video in. Good luck.
There are adapters for that, of course, but anyway,
you'll pay more for a good upscaler than you will for the console.
Yeah, just get the thing. Yeah, just get just get this new thing now. So this is of interest. I need to look into it a little bit more, but
I'm not the guy for this. But then I never was, right? Play a game, play it on my PC.
I worked at Toys R Us like at a time when they sold this. Like this was a thing, and that XE game system was there.
I remember having pallet loads of NESs during Christmas and just handing them as fast as we could sell them in the kiosks.
Ours came in cages. They were locked up. There's like cages, high security. Yeah. Like this is serious. And
this is Canada, so it wasn't that big of a deal.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, you don't have crime. That must be nice. I lived in the Boston area, so it was more of a problem.
Yeah.
But it was an exciting time. But obviously Atari, they went on from this to do the Lynx, which was honestly a pretty cool thing.
Yeah.
The handheld deal. And then the Jaguar, right? Which, had its moment at,
it was up against serious competition at the time.
Yeah. Right? This was all Sony was out by this point, and Sega was kept going. Nintendo kept going. It
was a tough time. And
they were passed by. Still, classic games, just saying.
Without a doubt.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was just playing a little Diablo.
Nice. That's one of that game looks great, right?
Yeah.
That's a fun little game.
Yeah.
Not a little game. It's a fun big game.
Yeah. If you just don't pay them any money, that's the key on this.
So the reason I mentioned AAA is like a lot of these mobile games are this in-app, nonsense, lots of ads and flashy, blah, 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 whatever. But I do think there aren't many, but like if you buy, for example, or Alien Isolation, right? A modern 3D horror shooter type game. You get the first couple of levels for free. And if you want to buy it, it's like $15, right? And that's it. There's no zoo. We're in, whatever. Nice.
Let's take a break, and then the back of the book, a tip, an app pick, RunAs Radio, and French liquor. Liquor. Coming up in just a bit. If you've been listening to this show over the years, you probably have come to a realization. Paul needs help.
Thanks. I wasn't sure where that was going. But
Fortunately,
fair enough.
There is a sponsor that can help. In fact, help is in their name. BetterHelp. I am a big fan of psychotherapy, of counseling. I think I've had a therapist my whole life. I needed a therapist my whole life. I have to do a show with Paul. What are your self-care non-negotiables?
This isn't about me. What's happening?
Maybe you never skip a leg day, right? Maybe you never skip a therapy day. When your schedule is packed with kids' activities, big work projects, and more, your priorities kind of take a back seat. That's not great. Even when we know what we need to be happy, what we need to do, it's hard sometimes to make time for it. So this is why I highly recommend, if you're thinking of starting therapy, making it convenient, making it easy, making it affordable with BetterHelp. Better, H-E-L-P. It's entirely online, so that means it can fit into your busy schedule. It can be convenient, flexible, really important. I tell everybody this. My kids, for instance, you can switch therapists anytime for no additional charge. The therapist understands. Finding the right therapist is even more important than finding, a suit that fits or shoes that fit. You want to find somebody that meets your needs, that is as smart as you are, that is caring in a way you want them to be, that kind of thing. So what's nice about BetterHelp, they don't charge you to switch therapists. So you can try It's a great way to try a bunch of different ones till you find the perfect therapist for you. But the real point here is don't skip that therapy day. Maybe we should think of it as coaching, or life coaching, or just somebody you can talk to. It's so nice. You can do it easily, affordably, conveniently with BetterHelp. Never skip a therapy day with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/Windows today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp. BETTER. BetterHelp. HELP.com/Windows. This is a sponsor I can really get behind, because I think more than ever in this day and age, it's a stressful time for everybody. But BetterHelp is there to help you make it. BetterHelp.com/Windows. All right, Paul. I gave you a moment for a mental health moment, and now it's time.
I need a mental health week.
For your tip of the week, sir.
Yeah, so I've been meaning to update my book, Windows Everywhere, for quite a while, and I've written a ton of stuff for it, but I've never integrated it in. And so I've started putting parts of it on the site first, so we can kind of do like a first draft. And I think this is going to be a 3-part series that will eventually probably just be a chapter. It's pretty big, but about the history of Windows and ARM. So the first part's up today, and it's kind of interesting. There it is, the little Surface RT looking thing.
Yeah. Oh my God, the RT.
Yep.
I had one of those.
In teal, no less. In
Oh
teal.
my God, a teal RT.
Yeah. Those were the days.
Mine cracked
days.
almost immediately, so fortunately I didn't.
There was a period where I literally walked around my house collecting dead RTs to be recycled. Because they were given to us a bunch too. I think I must have had half a dozen of them.
I had, I think, 4
They were all
at
dead.
one point, and they meant well,
This was was this the first Windows on ARM?
Yeah.
Wow.
There's Windows RT was the name of it. It was Windows 8, but on ARM, NVIDIA at the time. But, Intel comes into the story a lot. In fact, at every stage, Qualcomm played a role in the beginning, and they never actually shipped anything on Qualcomm. They obviously became a bigger deal. But yeah, it's interesting. It's to me anyway. I don't know.
No, I think this will be great. How many parts do you think you're gonna?
This one's probably gonna be 3 just for this part of it. 3 parts. Yeah, it's long. It's long. It's like the whole chapter is probably 18,000 words. Like, it's big.
Yeah.
Okay. So then the app pick is Start 11 was just updated today with to version 2.1. There's a couple of features, but the big one is, coincidentally, native support for ARM. So if you have Windows on ARM, you can run this thing natively and get a start menu that doesn't laugh at you behind your back. It does what you want. So made by our friends at Stardock.
Nice. Now I know you need therapy. It's not laughing at you, Paul.
It's not laughing with you. It's and then I'll just throw out Apple Podcasts is available on the web, which is a big deal if you're an iPhone user and you like that app, and that's the only place you can use it. You have a PC or whatever, it's not there. It's never going to be. But the web app kind of solves the problem there if that's what you want. So it's it looks nice. It looks like like an Apple app.
We talked about this yesterday on Mac Break Weekly. Apple's doing strange things. Like they just put maps on the web.
Yeah, I know, right? It's you're like, what's the point?
Yeah,
it's hard to.
It's like they suddenly got a web developer. Maybe this is the intern thing.
They hired a web.
Summer's almost over. Yep. Let's get all these things on the web.
Before the interns leave. Let's.
Yep.
But it is. Nice. I think everything should have a web interface. I think that's makes it easy, right?
Oh yeah, that's the tabula franca, right? Like it's the starting point for everything.
Mm-hmm.
Ladies and gentlemen, there is a fabulous RunAs Radio in your future. Richard Campbell.
Yeah, this is episode 946, and I actually recorded it back at NDC Oslo, which was in June, and one of the many stops I did in June. I got to sit down with 2 professors. They both, Daniela and Romina, both were at the Norwegian University of Science, but they currently work for a company called Visma, which is short for Visual Management. So this is Norwegian accounting software and things like that, all SaaS products. So they work in the security side of things. Dr. Cruzes is the professor side, is sort of the senior person. Romina is one of her proteges, quite brilliant in the way she was approaching researching and threat modeling of software in the cloud. So getting a picture of how we can build and manage the threat, build cloud-based software and make it reliable. Like the issues are different, and obviously security retrofitting is very difficult and costly to do. So better to do it ahead of time. And so we sort of ran down some of the tooling available and the approaches to finding potential attack threats for your software. And this is hoping that the sysadmins collaborate with development to do a better job of assessing the security risks of software before it's deployed and now you're scrambling under a threat or under a potential attack. So a lot of conversation about the supply chain threat. So, hygiene of the software that you're using from the different sources. Often that's open source software. And so there's a set of practices around controlling versions so that that you have you're not getting a hacked version of a library that you're counting on, and just having the confidence that sort of thing can be managed. So it's tackling a tough problem, and the toys about it, but it was good to sort of get that picture around the thinking of helping to make software more secure before it's out in the world and at risk of being exploited.
Nice.
Yeah.
Now I want you to exploit me with some brown liquor.
So the other weekend, and I have to say, like, this bottle's almost done. That's how much I like this stuff.
Ooh.
A couple of weekends back, we did a weekend in the city, stayed at a friend's condo downtown, and we went to a very nice French restaurant, and they had some French whiskey. And I'm like, what? Rick, really? Whiskey? Like, you get cognac from France. Like, why would you get whiskey from France? And this led to a little digging around, and I'm like, oh, there's a whole line of them. And I tried a couple, and they were pretty good. And then I found that my local high-end rare whiskey store had exactly one. They had the Amérique, the sherry cask. And so it sat, I put it on my desk to stare at when I'm here, and then start reading and digging. And of course, the more time I have to read and dig, the crazier the story gets. So let's talk crazy story here, because this is a whiskey made in France, specifically in Brittany, which does beg the question, why we use the word Britain in France? In fact, Brittany is the English word for that area. The French say Bretagne, or like almost Britannia. And the Bretons say Briche, because they're Celts. So the history of the Bretons.
Well, it makes sense they'd make whiskey then. That's cool.
Obviously, right?
They're known for their ciders, but
this distillery makes a ton of ciders. But yeah, this literally goes back to the fall. When the Roman Empire started to shrink and pulled out of Britain in the 5th century, and in came the Anglo-Saxons. Right? Now the Anglo-Saxons had already been invading before that, but when the Romans pulled back, it really went violent. And so a lot of people died, and many of them fled. I did sit down and read a BD, which was an Anglo-Saxon monk who wrote the ecclesiastical history of the English peoples in 730 AD. So he was writing about combat that happened 200 years before, by the Anglo-Saxons while being Anglo-Saxons. So his context was very much, well, the Anglo-Saxons were chosen by God, and so they were simply purging the inappropriate. So this was essentially 3 tribes of people from northwestern Europe. So the Angles come from Angel in northern Germany. The Saxons come from Lower Saxony, also in Germany, and the Jutes, which are from Jutland, which is now what we call Denmark. And they settled across England. The Angles, oddly enough, East Anglia. The Saxons in southern England, the Jutes you generally find in Kent and the Isle of Wight, although everything's mixed around. And literally that name is where the name England comes from. And if you think I'm trying to make a tidy summary on this, you're talking about 200 years of people moving back and forth. But a lot of those original inhabitants, the Welsh, the Cornish, the Celts, many of them fled England and ended up in northwestern France, in Brittany and Normandy, as in the Normans. The historical name of this area in Brittany along the coast is América, and you will notice that this bottle says Amérique. So what do we know about Brittany? Well, it's like France. It is in France, so it's a great growing region. They're well known for their butter and their fleur de sel. Our andouille sausage originates in Brittany, although the Breton version of that has tripe in it. There's also the Normandy version of andouille is a little bit different, but really the andouille is from Louisiana.
Yeah.
And although from French people who have been moved around a fair bit. It is a good wine growing region, but it is a bit further north, so they stick strictly to the whites. And their famous wine is called Muscadet, which is not Muscat. Muscat is the sweet dessert wine. Muscadet is a dry white specific to this region, although typically further from the coast down in Nantes. And yes, lots of apples, lots of berries, huge cideries, and a handful of distilleries. And it happens to be that the one I could get my hands on is one of the oldest distilleries that was built in that part of the world. So Leon Waringham set up the Waringham Distillery in 1900 in Lannion, which is in the far northwest part of Brittany, in an area called Côte de Granate Rose, which is the pink granite coast. So the rocks along the shores in Brittany have a pinkish hue. And so that's why they're known as the Pink Granite Coast. His original product was not a whiskey. It was called Elixir d'Armagnac. It is a liqueur.
Yeah.
Right. And by the way, 125 years later, you can still buy a 500 ml bottle for about $25. Same family still owns it, although there's several other families that have now gotten involved. I found a great ad from the 1930s from them that gave them a list of all of the products they were selling. They made 3 kinds of triple sec being distilled orange peel. And so they had a Mandarino Regence and a triple sec Salvatore and a triple sec Eclair. Don't know what the difference between them all. They also had a product called Grog Américain, which was probably a rum.
Yeah.
Crème de Cassis, blackcurrant liqueur, Mint Eclair, which is a mint schnapps, and the Rum Savannah, which is also, another kind of rum. And then the various schnapps. They did a mint schnapps, they did a cherry brandy, and Goulet Breton, which is cherry liqueur. So the cherry brandy is about 40% alcohol. The cherry liqueur is like 19%. So fast forward a couple of generations in the 1960s, Paul-Henri Waringham, who is the grandson of the founder of Leon, partners with Yves Lezier, who the Lezier family is also a longtime family in Breton, and they start making meads. So what they call Couchanet, which is made from fermented honey. Again, like a strong beer, 14% alcohol or so. Although they do refer to them as the Milthic Celtic drinks, and a call back to their Celtic heritage. That being said, of course, apples are from Kazakhstan, but don't tell them that. They do commit to, so it's the Lezier side of the family that says, let's make French whiskey in the 1980s. And it's right, the timing is very obvious. It's right about the time of the classic malts in Scotland, which created that resurgence in whiskey after the slow times of the 60s and the 70s, when United Distillers did that classic malts collection, which included Lagavulin and Cragganmore and a few others, that really kicked off a wave of whiskey. And that's right around the time that the Lezier started, like, could we make a whiskey in Breton? Their initial product a few years later was called WP Breton, and it was a blended whiskey. So they used 25% of malt whiskey, which was still young at that point, the first few years. They do whiskey without the yeast, so they're very much following the Scottish process. So it was at least 3 years old. But they were doing the French thing. So it was French barley, although it was 75% grain whiskey, which was made with French wheat. So fine. By 1988, they have their first single malt. It's only so good. And then at the same time, the son, Gilles Lezier, starts playing with apple brandy. So they're doing more distilling. He makes a version they call the traditional name for distilled cider, which is what you do when cider's getting old, is you make lambic. And if you make it in Britain, then you call it lambic breton. But he called it fine breton because it was better apple brandy. But the whiskey business gets really serious in 1993 when they actually build a set of French stills to the Scottish standard. So a proper pair of wash and high spirits stills, particularly for making whiskey. Now, the area that they're in is very Scottish. That is to say, it's along the coast. It is stormy there, lots of rain and so forth, good growing environment. It happens to be that the water source in Lannion is very low in lime, and of course, no iron and things that would normally be a problem for making distillates. And of course, they use French barley, although This distillery does not do their own maltings. They buy it malted, but they do their own grindings. The stills are not large, 6,000 liters for the wash still, 3,500 for the spirit still. Their new make, it comes at about 70%, although they do cut it to 63.5 because they do a lot of barreling in bourbon casks. This particular edition, the sherry cask, does exactly that. It spends, actually, this particular edition only aged in sherry casks. We're not really sure how long, but it's probably only 3 years, and considering the color, that's fair. There's many other editions where they do bourbon for a few years and then finish in sherry, very traditional to the style. And they do some French oak as well, virgin French oak. So that's unusual. If you look at the color of this is an ambered whiskey. There's not too much. They're not doing any coloring. This is how the whiskey actually went. And the reason that bottle's almost empty is because, boy, it's good.
Now I'm jealous.
The thing I can't shake, and I'm trying to decide if it's my mind or it's actually the taste, is there's cognac in there somewhere. Like, it's got that cognac feel. It's got a fair bit of burn, but it's not fruity in that same way, the same citrus notes and so forth. Now, cognac's in the southwest of France. It's quite a bit further south. It's just north of Bordeaux. Le Châtellerault is the area, like the province in France. It's the next province down from Brittany, and that is where cognac is made, obviously made from grapes, right? The cognacs are a derivative of Armagnac, which was the traditional way that you preserved aging wine when it was in barrels and wasn't going to be good for much longer. You wanted to use the barrels for other things. An Armagnac maker would come to your winery and would concentrate down the wine into Armagnacs, typically only in the 40-50% range. You'd let it sit till it was 40%. Cognac is much more sophisticated. It's a dual distillation process, and it's made to the purpose. But so I can't figure out if it's just my head or if it's really that there's something about the way they make whiskey there that, like all spirits, it's like, it's French. It's got a character to it that's very obvious. Now, these are fairly hard to come by in the U.S. I did find that Total Wine had one of the regular Armoric single malts available for about $75, which is pricey, but it's an unusual wine. This particular version, the sherry cask, I've only found in fancier stores for a bit more money, about $85. The one I'm going to have to find now, which I think I'll do while in Europe, is the Armoric double maturation, because they start in virgin French oak, local oak, and then finish it in sherry cask. So that should be the most French edition of this particular whiskey. But there's only a handful of distillers there, and they mostly make liqueurs. I mean, the bulk of the business of this company still is liqueurs, meads, apple brandy. The whiskey is kind of the third string there, but it's very good.
Aren't French oak casks used often in whiskey everywhere? Isn't that, no?
No, they're normally used for wine and for cognac.
Okay.
And they're expensive, right? And the French are very sticky about not selling them too. Right. So it's hard to get away with selling them, with getting them. You just can't come by them very easily. The French, to the point where this distillery has actually gotten VOC, like the appellations for protecting the methods, not just for the way they're making their whiskey, but also how they make their apple brandies.
Interesting.
And so, but a lot of that domain mindset came from France in the first place. This idea of cognac can only be made in cognac and champagne can only be made in champagne, although those are original. It all starts in France. It's not surprising that they jumped on this. Even though they're essentially copying the Scottish whiskey process, they are using French barley and they are using occasionally French barrels. And so this is our own thing. Like, we've made it our way. It's not surprising for the French. But it has, without a doubt, it has a character to it. They're not going to do long agings. It's there for further south in Scotland, so they're going to be warm, which means their losses in angel share are high. So you're not going to get a lot of 20-year-olds here. But and you'll notice none of these have a year appellation. There's a couple of special editions that are like 10s. So that's not how they're selling these things. What they're doing is making very nice whiskey with its own unique flavors and eminently drinkable. Not a stitch of peat. Just no smoke in there. I swear to you, I would put this beside a cognac and you'd have a tough time. Now that's true of any spay.
Interesting.
Right. And sherry finish in general. Like I have often done tastings with people that were, annoying me with their pretentiousness. And so I'd stick a cognac in the middle of it and see if they could tell. And almost never, because it's mostly you're tasting the wood anyway. Right. So it's very hard to pick up. And this one would be doubly so. Like I'd put this in a line of cognacs and see if you could figure out that it was a whiskey.
It looks like cognac, actually.
It does. It really has that color, and it drinks so much. Cognac.
Yeah. Interesting. Now I want to try it. That's great.
I know. I'm afraid I do this every week, where I really have found something interesting, and so now you have the problem I have, which is that I have a lot of bottles of half-finished whiskey these days, and I've been home for several weeks now. So the stack is to the point where she who must be obeyed is looking at me like, "What are we going to do with all this?" Like, we will drink them.
Well, I would have thought if you're home, they would be thinning, not growing.
Well, you would think, except that getting a new bottle every week is, I'm going to only drink so fast. I would say this one's probably not going to make it out of the office.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Yeah,
wow.
We're leaving for Copenhagen on Friday, but I think this one will be empty. But of the half a dozen bottles I've done while I've been home in a row, only 2 never made it out of the office. This one and
okay, that's high praise.
And the others, I still got some of the Gark in the decanter back there. The Writer's Tears went upstairs. The German went upstairs. And she's enjoying them, but this was a stunner
on a normal pace.
Yes. Yeah. The Laird of the Fintry did not make it out of here. Right. The Legend did.
So this is the Richard Campbell test. If it gets out of the office,
if you can, and one of the reasons this thing's in trouble is because I got it. I hinted at this last week because it was already staring at me, and I've had time to write about it. I ended up reading a freaking 1,200-year-old document about the history of the Bretons, for crying out loud!
I love that though. I think that's great. That's what's interesting. There's history in all of this stuff.
There is.
Every region.
Speaks to the terroir. There's just part of the nature of the whiskey of a given area is the people who made it. And these are interesting people. They are in many ways original English before the Anglo-Saxons.
Right.
And it's fun. I poked through the variations of the language, not just Breton, but Gallo. And there's a half a dozen of them that are down to maybe 100,000 speakers left. And a lot of them are seriously influenced by French. But the number of times you see 3 or 4 names on something that are just the different variants of the local language there. But those Breton signs that have the French name underneath it, dude, that's Gaelic, man. Truly,
Isn't that interesting?
The Celtic influence is there, and it's strong, and it's part of the style that they have there.
How cool. Yeah. How cool. My daughter studied in Rennes in high school. She spent a year in Rennes, so I know the region. I love it. It's a beautiful region.
It's a beautiful part of the world, without a doubt. But it's its own unique thing. Once again, there's complexity there, and it's all too often we just hang out in Paris when we're in France.
Right.
And if you're not, you're headed to the south of France, which, nothing wrong with either of those places.
No, absolutely not. Yeah.
Please go to Bordeaux and then go north. Go up to the coast and see something different again.
We love the whiskey, and we love your recommendations. You see, Linux Lizard picked up the 12-year-old Bowmore from last week and loved it.
Yeah.
So
not too much smoke, just a little, you're drinking something. Greg,
that's why I want to try the Emmerich, because I'm not a peat fan. I'm not a smoke fan.
This is your, this is a French spay through and through.
That's what I want.
No 2 ways about it.
That's what I want. Richard Campbell, thank you so much. RunAsRadio.com.net rocks. You're off for Copenhagen.
Yes, next show will be coming from Copenhagen. I think I'll be able to get a space on the venue site because it's a festival. It runs late, so it'll be the evening there. And I have a hankering. I will have a Danish whiskey in hand when that happens.
Hopefully with a Danish of some kind to eat. That's from there, right?
I hate to say this, but it's actually from Vienna.
They just call it a Danish because they like to confuse
any more than the French call them French fries.
Just like the
Danes
Pennsylvania,
don't call them Danish.
Pennsylvania Dutch or German. Things are confused. Why do we have words?
Why? No one knows.
Come on.
But you're a writer. You should know.
Obfuscating meaning is what words are all about.
Yes, right.
Paul Thurrott, Thurrott.com, THURROTT.com. As you can see, I'm a premium member, so should you be. It's well worth it. You can also get Paul's books from the leanpub.com website, including Windows Everywhere, kind of a history of Windows through its development platforms and languages, and then, of course, the field guide to Windows 11, now with Windows 10 built in. leanpub.com. Paul, you going to be home next week, or are you going to Mexico?
Next week I will be home.
Okay.
Yeah, I go to Berlin the week after that, I think.
Is that IFA or something? What's going on in Berlin?
Yeah, IFA. I'm going to New York first. That shouldn't impact you. I think I'm going to be in Berlin for at least one show.
Well, we're a traveling bunch here. I'm going to New York in a couple of weeks. Micah will fill in for me on the 12th and the 19th. So we'll continue to do the show wherever we are. I will be at Bryant Park on September 7th, 3 to 5 p.m. for a meetup. If you're in New York City, come by, say hi. And then we're going to go on a photo walk with Joe. Sure, that'd be a lot of fun. We make a special thanks to our Club Twit members who make this show possible. Club Twit is $7 a month. You get ad-free versions of all the shows. You get additional content. You get access to the incredible Club Twit Discord. But most of all, you get the good feeling knowing that you're supporting the content you want. That's how you vote for the content you want. Join Club Twit at twit.tv/clubtwit. Twit.tv/clubtwit. And a very special thanks to all of our Club Twit members for their support in making Windows Weekly possible this week. We do the show and we stream it live. Again, thanks to the club, we now stream it live on 7 platforms. Let me see if I can do this. Many of the club members are watching on Discord, but we're also on YouTube. That's actually nothing new. YouTube.com/twit/live. Twitch.tv/twit. Kick, Facebook, LinkedIn, and X.com. So many ways to watch us live. There's hundreds of people on each of the platforms, I think, which is cool. If you want to do that, you should start around 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern Time, 1800 UTC on Wednesday. That's when we do Windows Weekly. And, of course, if you can't be there live, even if you can, you probably should download a copy. That way you have a copy for yourself from the website, twit.tv/WW. Paul hosts it on his website, Thurrott.com. We also, on YouTube, there's a video channel dedicated to Windows Weekly. That's a great way to share clips if you are so inclined. Or subscribe in your favorite podcast client, and that way you'll get it automatically every week. And you don't have to think about it. You just have it whenever you're in the mood for Windows Weekly. Thank you, Paul. Thank you, Richard.
Thank you.
Great to see you. Thank you, everybody. We'll see you next time on Windows Weekly. Bye-bye.